Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 21st, 2019 meeting of Council. I can't believe we're getting towards the end of May already. It just seemed to fly very, very quickly. We do have all members of Council here, so that represents a quorum. We've already accomplished item 1 on our agenda, which is call to order. Item 2, moment of reflection. If you're able to do so, will you please stand for that moment? Thank you. Members of Council, on item 3, declarations of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Seeing none. Councillor Shea, please.
CR3, CR3 or CR4, there's a film festival, fabulous festival, Fringe Film, that's asking for something. My son is employed by them, so I'll declare a conflict on that issue.
Thank you. You're referring to the clerk's report, and there's an item on the fabulous festival of Fringe Film. Excuse me. By July 19th, I will have that down pat. Okay, so we'll just identify your conflict of interest. Councillor Shea, thank you very much. All right, any further conflicts of interest? Seeing none. Item 4, closed session, none. Matters arising from closed session, NA. Comment period, we're down to item 6. Members of the audience, are there any comments particular to this agenda? All right, seeing none. Item 7 is public meetings, which there are none. Consent item, we're now on part 1 of the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Thank you. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, seconded by Councillor Hergert. Be it resolved that items A1 to B1 inclusive contained in Part 1 consent agenda be adopted as amended, and further that authorization be given to the action to be taken as may be necessary to give effect to the recommendations contained therein. Clerk Turner, would you like to speak to the amendments?
So the 2 amendments include the amending page 2 of the May 7th Council minutes. And more specifically, Resolution 132 of 19 regarding the OSPCA, or Ontario Society for Prevention to Cruelty to Animals. I neglected indicating that Councillor Hamilton seconded the motion. And secondly, another amendment to the May 14th Committee of the Whole Planning minutes under public meetings, or section 3-1, page 5. I had repeated the word only twice, so I deleted one of those words. That's it.
Questions? Councillor Hergert, please.
Yes, also for the Committee of the Whole Planning on May 14th, as it related to the Trumbull request for a change to the severance application, I actually voted no to that, and I was the only one there, so we'll have to amend the minutes there. I was also hoping to pull the SMART minutes as well as the library minutes, and I'll look forward to Councillor Hamilton informing us on that.
SMART and library, okay. Minutes. Okay, I'll call the question on this, and then we can address the minutes at that time. Clerk Turner, procedurally, are we within that? Okay. Calling the question, are there any other questions first? All right, calling the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Councillor Hamilton, would you mind responding to the following questions from Councillor Hergert?
Sure. So the question would be on SMART, there in the minutes, it discusses a purchase from Micro Age Basics in the amount of $16,000. And I was curious which procurement bylaw.
Sorry, that's my mistake. I just thought, so when you're pulling that information, it should be discussed in new business then.
It just got a little more detailed than we anticipated, but that's just fine. So with that in mind, Clerk Turner is now suggesting.
If it was just a minor comment, then
Yes.
it would be in order, but if there's more discussion needed, that would be more appropriate under new business.
Fair enough. Okay, we'll just note that, and thank you for that. All right, so now we're moving to part 2, regular agenda, item 9, communications from mayor and members of council. I'll start, and then I'll go to my left. Deputy, you'll be ready in a moment, I expect. So very action-packed couple of weeks. I participated in Education Week at Normby Community School, and I had the opportunity to read 3 books to students. And the books that, at least 2 of the 3 books that I read were books that we could use as adults. So it was what to do with an idea and what to do with a problem. And then the 3rd book was just out of entertainment, which was The Secret Life of Squirrels. So that was just on the side. I brought greetings at the annual general meeting for the Durham Community Healthcare Board, the foundation. I was most pleased to do that. I helped at the Durham and District Horticultural Society plant sale. And let me see what else. I'm looking forward to Crab, Lobster, and Steak Fest this weekend. Deputy Mayor, are you ready to go with that?
Nowhere far as busy as the previous one. I did get out to our airport. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stay for the rides that were offered. So, because I had to go to this was last Saturday, the Grey Bruce dance recital. So I spent 3 hours watching some ballet.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Other than that, I was away on some business, personal business in the States. So the next couple of weeks, we're going to be vamping back up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shea, please.
Thank you. Yes, I attended on the weekend to the Elmwood Chamber of Commerce Wings event to help raise money and have a delicious meal. And following that, on the same day, attended an opening at the Durham Art Gallery where some new exhibitions are on. I also attended with the Mayor and Councillor Hamilton a meeting with Mary Ferguson and Ellie Green, who are Mary Ferguson of Economos in Kimberley and Ellie Green of Georgian College in Barrie, who are spearheading an initiative to foster social enterprise in our area, and they're looking for partners. So we had a really productive conversation, and we'll be bringing something forward to council, and having those 2 probably come and address us at some point.
Yes.
So that was just something that I wanted to give other councillors a heads up on. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Councillor Hergert, please.
Yes, so we did have a very productive day at the airport showing off our joint asset with Brockton and Hanover and West Grey. And thank you to all the COPA pilots that took anyone for a ride in the airplane. Some were more adventurous than others, but we appreciate everyone's attendance at that event. It's really nice to show off our joint asset and to be able to explain to other people what we have seen there. I also will speak to this a little bit later when we talk about remuneration, but I would like to advise our council that we have a new interim airport manager, and his name would be Rob Olds, and that was effective, will be effective the last day of May. So I'll bring further information as we work through the job description and so on. There's a new tender out for hay for the sale at the airport as well. Firefighters Breakfast, June 1st in Elmwood, and I invite everyone to come out to that. Durham Horticultural Society has a planter make and take tomorrow evening. Warden's Breakfast this week, I will be attending. That's at the P&H Center. COPA for Kids is June 8th at the Saugeen Municipal Airport. Edge Hill School, May 25th, Mayfair. Strategic planning session for West Grey as well is coming up. Ayton Bandstand, June 15th. Get your tickets from the Ayton Recreation Committee. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I just want to confirm with our CAO, I think the Warden's Breakfast tomorrow is actually at the launch pad.
It is.
So, okay,
I was going to comment
good.
on that.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Councillor Townsend, please.
Thank you. The mayor and I attended our first meeting of the Multiple Municipality Long-Term Care Working Group, and it's going to be our last for a little while because we're kind of on a hiatus where the county has changed their mind to actually keep both homes, one in Grey Gables, one in Durham with Rockwood. They have applied for 28 extra beds for Rockwood, and it's just a sort of a position hold at this point because the ministry is changing the application process, so that'll get a little delay in that process. Once we understand where we're heading, meaning the minister's responded, then we'll decide whether the group will stay together, and also what its mandate will be, because it has met its mandate of keeping Grey Gables open. I also attended the airport, and I actually stayed for lunch. The cafe looked really entertaining, and it's one of our great assets out there. I'd encourage you to get out there if you can. It's reasonable, and during the summer, they're actually going to be open for later hours till 8 p.m. And there's not a lot of places open, late in the evening, so you might find another one that you enjoy. Should also comment, if you don't know, Pebbles is reopened with their reconstruction. It's beautiful in there and well worth it. Excuse me, on June 23rd is Decoration Day at Durham Cemetery, and we had our first board meeting last week as well, so that was fun. As the mayor mentioned, we went to the Healthcare Foundation annual meeting, and I'm pleased to say that they raised over $341,000 to give to the hospital to make it be able to stay alive, and also the region equipment like the CT scan, which is shared by all the 4 hospitals, right? They all contribute to that, so that's excellent. The CEO, Mike Barrett, actually shared some of his activities going on as a result of the changes announced by the province and the way that they're doing structuring, since the LINs will no longer be in place. So the senior staff's meeting, and they're likely going to propose that Grey Bruce is a team, which is what they're being asked to form, and they're expecting 30 to 50 of them within the province, so that'll be kind of exciting as well. So we'll see where that goes. Catch the Ace was won on Friday, over $14,000. 2 things to note. One, it was Catherine Greenleaf, 98 years old, Durham resident, a veteran that won it, and so I'm sure she'll be excited with that. And the other thing is, it's the second round for the West Grey Durham Lions, and both times it's gone all the weeks that they had the license for. This time, it went right to the very last envelope before the winner was actually declared. So when you think about it, each week you open an envelope, and at the end, whatever, if it hasn't been won, you keep pulling tickets till the envelope that the person's picked wins. And it was the very last one that actually won. So that was kind of amazing. There are some out there that go out first week, third week. So when you go that long, it's pretty good. 2 other reminders. There is a golf tournament on the 1st that is for the Lions, in support of the Lions. There's also one on the 22nd of June for the Healthcare Foundation as well. So I'll be participating in both of those just to continue to support the group. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Yeah, I also visited the Saugeen Municipal Airport to see the setup there, and appreciate the COPA 54, the pilots, giving us a little ride to see the local area, and Durham in particular was my route. Just a couple of things that have happened in the past that I'd just like to say thank you to all the people that were involved in the clean sweep. If you had a chance to go out and pick up garbage in your area, that we appreciate that. If you haven't done that, there's still opportunities. We have some orange garbage bags that you can use to do that if you wish to do it at a later date. You just have to inform the office. Household hazardous waste drop-off was a week ago, I guess, and maybe our director will speak to that. I think it was fairly successful. It was quiet when I got there, but usually it's fairly busy at the start, so hopefully it was successful. And then I guess that was a week ago, because this past Saturday was Goods Exchange Week, and hopefully people had the opportunity to set some things out their driveway that maybe they didn't want and don't believe it belong in our landfill. So thank you for participating in that, if that was what you did. That's it for me.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hamilton, please.
Well, it was standing room only at the Roxy in Owen Sound for the debut of Resilience, a climate change film of hope and action, which was created by a former West Grayer, Liz Zetlin, and John Anderson. So it was so great to see people from across Grey and Bruce come together to talk about climate change. The film's available for free on resiliencedoc.info, and the hope is that we'll have screenings in our home living rooms or in community groups that we can move the conversation about climate change forward. Really enjoyed our time at the Saugeen Municipal Airport. That was on a Saturday, up high in the sky, bird's eye view of West Grey. And then the very next day, on Sunday, I was out with Saugeen Nature looking at wildflowers at Sulphur Springs Conservation Area. So it was this great this, being up high and then being down close to the ground. It was a great way to experience West Grey. Lots of great events coming up. Just want to mention on Saturday, June 1st, Elmwood Firefighters is having a breakfast from 7:30 to 11 o'clock, and the village is having a yard sale. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much to all members of council, very active, and I appreciate that. That takes us now to item 10, delegations, of which we have 3. The first one being Brian Lenny, Senior Advisor, Municipal Affairs and Stakeholder Relations, Ontario Southwest Public Affairs, Enbridge Gas Inc. So this is an update on community expansion projects. Ayton and Neustadt, we're absolutely intrigued and keeping our fingers crossed. And an update on the proposed Owen Sound reinforcement project. So if you wouldn't mind going to the podium, turning on the mic, we would very much appreciate your delegation.
Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to present. Mr. Turner had reached out to me a month ago with the request of council, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to provide an update. I really wanted to break this into 3 parts. You may have seen a year ago, if we were to come to council, that our name would have been Union Gas, and now we're obviously Enbridge Gas. So I spent a little bit of time on that, spent time talking about the Owen Sound reinforcement project, and then finally spent time talking about this potential for community expansion to Ayton and Neustadt. First, I'd like to point out as well that Jeremy Miller, who's our field supervisor for utility services, some of you may know Jeremy, he's been in the local area for many years. He's here with me tonight as well. And my name's Brian Lenny, I'm a senior advisor for municipal affairs. Right now, I'd basically just like to thank you for the opportunity. And, recently we went through some restructuring to better align our company as one, combining Union Gas and Enbridge Gas Distribution. So Enbridge Gas Distribution was the utility that served previously Toronto, Niagara, some parts of the Greater Toronto Area, Ottawa, some parts north of Toronto, and then obviously Union Gas served the rest. So we've now combined into one utility, better positioned for the future in the province. But I want to be clear that despite the change in name, we're still the same people, as evidenced by Jeremy here and many others. Some may have changed roles, but we're still the same people doing the same jobs, committed to our core principles, which are the safe delivery of affordable natural gas to communities in Ontario. The last thing I'll say in this kind of preamble is that if I do not know the answer to your question when we get to the question and answer section, I'm not by any means into the very technical, nitty-gritty details of construction techniques. So if I do not know the answer to your question, it is my commitment that I will take it back and get you the answer as soon as possible. So our focus tonight is Enbridge Gas, but I'll spend a brief moment to talk about Enbridge Inc., which is our corporate ownership. So they're based in Calgary, as you may know, operations across North America and Europe, and the slogan is that we fuel quality of life for millions of people every day. I want to point out that when you think of Enbridge, you often think of natural gas, oil, traditional transmission, distribution pipelines. We're also one of the largest renewable energy companies in North America, and also have a significant renewable energy portfolio in Europe as well. So we are really in all aspects of energy and committed to the safe and reliable delivery of that energy. So as mentioned, with Enbridge Gas, we were formed on January 1st from the amalgamation of Union Gas and Enbridge Gas Distribution. We're one of the largest integrated storage, transmission, and distribution natural gas utilities in North America, and we're based in Ontario. So our 2 kind of core areas of, I guess, our administration would be in Toronto and Chatham. Despite the merger, we maintain strong centers of excellence in both communities. Nothing's changed there. Our core values of safety, integrity, and respect underpin everything we do. We are community partners, and we are very proud of our partnership, our long-standing partnership with West Grey, contributing over $154,000 to the property tax base. And our assets are passive. You don't have to collect garbage off our assets or remove snow from them. And we're happy with our partnership with West Grey. As mentioned certainly before, and you may hear it many times from me and from others, our number 1 priority is safety. In everything we do, not just at Enbridge Gas, but at Enbridge Incorporated. We work safe in our daily operations, and we also invest in safety for the future. We have 2 control rooms, one in Chatham, one in Toronto, monitor our systems 24/7, 365, and at the corporate level, spent nearly $2 billion maintaining the fitness of our pipelines last year and completed over 26,700 pipeline inspections. It is our #1 focus. So that's kind of the first part, which is the overview of Enbridge Gas and Enbridge Inc. I want to get now into the details of, the other parts of why we're here tonight to discuss 2 items specifically. One is the proposed Owen Sound Transmission Pipeline Reinforcement Project. The other is the potential for a community expansion project to communities of Ayton and Newstead. So I'm going to start with the Owen Sound Reinforcement Project, but I just want to just say on this point, the 2 projects are completely separate from each other, so I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. They would be 2 separate teams within the utility working on them. There is no correlation, or there's no relation between the 2 projects, so they're completely separate. And just would like to reiterate that. I might say that a few times because, if the one community expansion goes ahead, there'll be different people dealing with staff than there would be for the Owen Sound Reinforcement Project. So for many years, our Owen Sound transmission system has been in operation, providing natural gas service to customers on a line that stretches from Waterloo to Wyerton. A portion of that transmission line, as you know, currently runs through West Grey. Our proposed Owen Sound Reinforcement Project seeks to add an additional capacity by adding a new line to that system to address a recent increase in demand along the system. It's a significant investment in local utility infrastructure. In terms of kind of the specific details of the project, it'll occur in West Grey and Chatsworth over 36 kilometers. Now I'm going to stop there to say that this is the project as it stands now, today, May 21st. Currently, the project's still in a kind of a holding pattern, and the scope could change. I don't anticipate the scope to this 36 kilometers we're discussing about tonight to change, but it could change in other ways. So I'll just say as a part to that just the project scope could change, but as of now, this is what it'll look like. Over 36 kilometers, and in West Grey, the project specifically will occur primarily along Concession Road 2. The estimated cost of the project is over $60 million, with hundreds of temporary local jobs created, and we're sourcing local materials wherever possible, and that's a point of emphasis for us when we are working in the local community to work with local suppliers and vendors. What it means, in addition to the $154,000 in property tax we pay, an additional approximately $95,000 a year to the municipality. And you'll likely, probably most importantly, want to know why we chose Concession Road 2 for the route, along Concession Road 2, and not where the existing pipeline is. So this was done after extensive study from our consultant AECom. And the thought there being essentially that Concession Road 2 is, after the environmental review, is the least impact option from an environment and construction perspective, since the area has already been construction in for the creation of the road. The gravel grass interface of the road, where roughly the pipeline would be, balances minimal impact with roadway safety in an area that's already been disturbed for the creation of the road. So there's been a lot that's occurred already. I know with the change of council as well, there's things that occurred during the previous council term, there's things that are occurring now. So I'll just give a brief review of kind of what's occurred. We've held several information sessions. They were held by our consultant. In 2017, I believe, there was 2 or 3. And we're committed to continuing to engage the community as part of the planning process. So we had initial consultation with municipal staff. That's since stopped until we figure out the next stages for this project. We've consulted with local interest groups like Saugeen Nature and with local Indigenous communities. What I did most recently was send a letter mail out, which I had forwarded to Mr. Turner as well, to the local community along Concession Road 2 in April, which provided an update that essentially stated that as of now, the plan for the project would be to submit our OEB application, our Ontario Energy Board application, later this year. We don't know the specific date yet, and again, this goes back to my commitment to keeping you informed as this progresses, and with the goal to construct in 2020. Now, if you're driving along Grey Road 25 right now, you may see that there's been a section of trees cleared. It's on the Chatsworth side, and it's close to Dornoch. And It is an area where there would be a custody transfer station created. This custody transfer station would be for another utility which is getting gas from our project, that'd be EPCOR. And so this custody transfer station is currently in the development stage, so that would be the only work that we see occurring in 2019. Otherwise, there would be no work occurring in 2019 for this project. The goal would be, if approved by the Ontario Energy Board, if we submit this application in the next, say, few months, that the project would start in roughly May 2020 and be complete by roughly November 2020. And then we would come back the next year in 2021 for a brief period to do any cleanup work, replanting of trees, any vegetation restoration. That would be our general construction plan. One of the most important things about construction is particularly along Concession Road 2. We've had extensive communications with residents on this point. I know there's been a lot of discussions with folks previous to this role, to me, and I'll continue that, is that we know we'll be crossing driveways here and there. We know that there'll be brief lane closures potentially of the road. We're not sure of those details yet. But what we want to make sure that everyone's aware of is that during construction, we're going to work with residents to ensure they maintain access to their properties at all times, and that we will minimize disturbance to the local area. So when I say minimize disturbance, that means employing mufflers, muffling equipment on our construction equipment, dust mitigation wherever possible. And we have extensive experience working in urban and rural residential areas, and we'll employ the techniques we've learned over the past 100 years working, particularly over the last, let's say, 30 years of intensive urban and rural residential construction to this project as we would to any project. So that is the Owen Sound Reinforcement Project as it stands now. I'll turn now our attention to the potential for community expansion, the communities of Ayton and Newstead. So again, I'll remind you that this is a completely separate project from the reinforcement, would be done with a separate team. So just ask that you kind of compartmentalize both of them as two separate things. So why community expansion? I think to everyone in this room, it's probably an obvious answer, but the point of community expansion from the previous provincial government to the current provincial government is expanding natural gas service to underserved rural areas. The cost of natural gas compared to other fuel sources is substantially lower, as evidenced by that chart, which I've included on the slide. And the current Ontario government is proposing regulations to make the expansion of service to rural communities easier. So the history of this with West Grey, with previous councils, was that we've been working since 2016 to bring gas to West Grey, to Ayton and Newstead. And in 2016, we participated in the Ontario Energy Board's community expansion proceeding, and with the support of West Grey, sought the funding needed to bring natural gas to Ayton and Newstead through the previous natural gas grant program. So the natural gas grant program, as it exists, it no longer exists. So from the change in the previous government to the current government, the natural gas grant program was discontinued. What occurred in its place was something called Bill 32 in Ontario Regulation 2419, which is kind of a new version, let's say, of the natural gas grant program. And what they provide for $1 a month contribution from existing natural gas utility customers in Ontario to help fund natural gas expansion projects. So it comes into effect July 1st of this year. But to be clear on this one, and this is kind of the tricky part of it, Bill 32 and Ontario Regulation 2419 only contemplate 9 projects that were previously announced under the natural gas grant program. So unfortunately, the expansion to West Grey is not on those 9 projects. Those 9 projects have already been announced. They included an expansion in North Bay, an expansion in the Chatham-Kent area, an expansion in Northern Ontario to a mine. So these projects have been on the books for a very long time. So Bill 32, Ontario Regulation 2419 focus only on those 9 projects. So what we're talking about here tonight is the future, which would be expansion to Ayton and Newstead. Right now, and the challenging part as I speak to you tonight, is that the program details and regulations that would support that future community expansion to beyond those 9 projects, including the details that would help determine which communities would be eligible to receive support, are not yet available. So as mentioned, at this time, it's unclear what other projects may be possible and when we would move forward, but we want to be clear from an Enbridge Gas perspective, nothing has changed from the Union Gas perspective, which is our focus would be if the regulations are favorable, the new regulations when they are announced, which we anticipate they will be announced sometime, hopefully soon this year, that if the regulations are favorable when they are announced, that if the economics make sense, that we will proceed with community expansion to Ayton and Newstead. When we look at that map, I want to be clear that, specific technical details of that project aren't available at this point. We don't know specifically which streets would be included, for example. I would say as a general rule of thumb, you're going to have the streets that are in the kind of core of the community certainly included in those, probably just to the outskirts, depending on technical feasibility. One thing I will point out as well, which I should have noted on this, and I didn't specifically note because it's unclear, is that in addition to an expansion to Ayton and Newstead, you would have a road, and which road it is would be to be determined, connecting the two communities where distribution connections to natural gas would also be available. So it's not just the two communities, it would be a road, whichever road it would be, in between the two that would also be available for expansion. We know how important access to affordable and reliable natural gas is to the municipality, is to residents here. And we'll continue to work with local communities such as yourselves and the provincial government. And we look forward, hopefully, to being able to share some exciting news related to the expansion of natural gas, hopefully shortly in the future. I know there's a lot of hopes and a lot of maybes in that presentation. We're just kind of waiting on what those next steps will be, and rest assured that if they make sense, this will proceed. So as mentioned kind of on the previous slides, is that regardless of the outcome for both those projects, for the Owen Sound reinforcement, for community expansion, my commitment, Jeremy's commitment, our company's commitment is to keep you informed with updates as more information is available. So as the scope becomes more clear for the Owen Sound reinforcement, if it stays the same, if it changes, certainly there'll be consultation directly with staff, and there'll be information provided directly to you as soon as those details are known, and hopefully known quite shortly. As soon as we get word on this next phase, potential phase of a community expansion, the provincial government had said up to 80 communities could be included in this next phase. As soon as we get word on that next phase and we do the economics, you'll be the first to know, as will every other community that we're able to share that news with. And most importantly as well, going back to April, when I sent that letter out to the folks along the Owen Sound reinforcement line, I'll continue to keep those folks informed as well. Obviously, being the ones who are most impacted by a potential project there, they will be informed every step of the way, and that is my commitment. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, and as mentioned, if there are any questions that I do not have the answer for, I will get them back to you as soon as possible. I am happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. We very much appreciate the presentation on the three aspects from Enbridge. One of the questions that's outstanding to me, and I'm speaking of the possible community expansion or community expansion to Ayton and Newstead, what type of new regulations would be favorable to to natural gas in Ayton and Newstead?
Your Worship, I will say that regulations that are similar to what is out there now, $1 per month surcharge on all utility customers across the province would likely be the favorable conditions. However, we have no indication if that would be the case. We don't know what the next phase regulations will look like. We know that so far so good with those 9 projects and the $1 a month charge. Those projects are proceeding, I can tell you that. I believe every one except one, and the only one that's not going forward is because it's currently on hold, but I think that all the rest are moving forward. So I would say regulations along those lines would be favorable, I believe, but again, I would caution that by saying we just don't know at this point what those will look like.
Okay, thank you for that. Members of Council, Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, you said the line going down concession 2 is a transmission line, so no individual connections. Does that mean there's no possibility of connections along that line?
So yes, and I apologize, I should have clarified that point too, because it was on my slide notes. You're correct. It is a transmission line, and this is a thing we do get quite regularly. Unfortunately, with transmission lines, the pressure in the line is to such an extent that in order to get connections to customers off that, a separate distribution project would have to occur. And currently, the economics for that distribution project, let's say for Concession Road 2, just aren't in a favorable position for residents. In those cases where you have an expansion, residents would have to pay. Growth pays for growth, essentially, in that sense. And the economics are at a point now that just don't make sense for potential growth to that area. However, we continue to always work the numbers and see what works, and we're committed to continuing that. But as of this time, I don't want to get everyone's hopes up. There is no plan for distribution and connections off that line. It's not physically possible.
Yeah, you're not actually disappointing me. I kind of figured that's why you put the comment in. I was just confirming it. Thank you.
Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Just to further on that, if we had a large development, would it warrant connection?
So Jeremy may know, I would say that any new development obviously changes how we approach anything, because we'll get the information on what the potential load could be. We'll feed that into economic models. So I would say potentially. I know the economics on the Concession Road 2 specifically are a challenge. I will point out that one of the key things really will be the community expansion aid in Newstead if it goes forward. When you have lines that are there, cost goes down to extend lines once lines are already in. So anything after the community expansion aid in Newstead would certainly be a lot more, I believe, and perhaps Jeremy can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but anything after that community expansion would be a lot more, I think, economically favorable once those lines are in the ground and we're up and running.
Further questions? Councillor Shea.
So you mentioned that we were in discussions, and I think you said 2016, to sort of identify those two communities as potential targets. A change of government happened, and they were not at a stage in development to be able to move forward with the new regulations coming in. So we're sort of going back to square one. There were 8 or 9, but then later you said 8. I assume it's this. So they're already going forward. So we're in a kind of, so those two communities are in a holding pattern, waiting for new regulations and waiting for a possible opportunity to move forward. How many other communities do you have in that same holding pattern?
So I was at a conference recently with, Minister McNaught was at the conference, Minister of Infrastructure, and he had said that up to 80 communities could be connected, once these new regulations, the second phase is announced. I would say from our perspective, we're not sure if it'll be all 80, but it'll certainly be as many as possible. If they're going to pass regulations that are favorable to that extent, I would say that the number would probably be up to what Minister McNaughton said, probably to that 80 level. Yes.
Mr. Miller, are you okay to go to the podium? I just want to I know this will be of great interest to our viewers, and I want to make sure that it's captured on the mic. So thank you.
I would just say, too, on top of that, that we had a community expansion program for Ontario, and we had a list of probably 50 communities that we were pushing for. And again, if we had it our way, we would let the government, or we would be able to say that these are the biggest bang for our buck. So a community like Ayton has X amount of potential customers in it. Can we take our money and take it to Ayton? So again, it'll be on that, what makes the most sense for the money that we're getting from our customers, that $1 a month. So I think that's kind of where it is. Once we get the new regulations, I think Brian would be able to come back with a lot better idea.
So is there anything that this council can do to be ready for these new regulations and to put us in the queue for consideration?
So the letter that I sent to Mr. Turner to the council, I believe it was in March, was our indication to you that West Grey, Ayton, and Newstead is a focus priority area. Those letters went out to the specific communities, as Jeremy mentioned, that we are focused on. So from our perspective, so long as everything's ready to go and the regulations are favorable, we're ready for expansion here, so long as everything works out. From your perspective, I don't want to sway you one way or another to say you should do this or do that. I would just say, I think we've been told that new regulations could potentially be coming out this year, potentially. So, it'll be in our hands after that to work the economics to see if everything makes sense once we get them. So yeah, it's a tricky situation for me. I don't want to sway you to say you should do this or do that. But rest assured, from our perspective, this is a priority area.
Right, and we were delighted to get that letter, so thank you for that. Members of council, any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. We hope to see you back here before the year's out and with some really good news. Thank you again for your delegation. All right, moving on to our second delegation. This is Jackie Muller, Business Development Manager, and Dale. Oh, okay. So Jackie Muller's here, and there will be someone else that Jackie can introduce for us. So this is Ontario Clean Water Agency, expression of interest in operations and maintenance of West Grey water treatment and wastewater system. So good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, and municipal staff. On behalf of the Ontario Clean Water Agency, I want to thank you for having us here tonight. Sure. Like the Mayor said, I'm Jackie Muller. I'm Business Development Manager with Aqua. With me tonight is Richard Eagle, who is the Acting Regional Manager. Our goal tonight is to share information on who we are and what we do. Our presentation will be divided into two parts. I'll talk about who we are and community involvement, and Richard will talk about operations and maintenance and support services. So who we are an arm's-length agency of the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. We are a public organization that does not receive funding from the provincial government. We operate under a full cost recovery. We are different from municipalities and public organizations because we are publicly owned. Last year, 180 plus municipalities partnered with Aqua in our shared service model. Richard will go into a little bit more detail when he talks. Not only are Aqua employees the providers of clean, safe drinking water, we are also the consumer. 1 in 4 people drink Aqua treated water every day. We are the largest water and wastewater operator in Canada with over 800 employees. We also operate for First Nations, institutions, and industries. Some of the municipalities, the local municipalities that we work for are Shelburne, Wellington North, Town of Erin, Grand Valley, Springwater, Wasaga Beach, Saugeen Shores, Chatsworth, Georgian Bluffs, Northern Bruce Peninsula, and the town of South Bruce Peninsula. Aqua believes in supporting local communities where we live and work, like participating in the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, the Grey Bruce Children's Water Festivals and other water festivals throughout the province, as well as council tours in the facilities we operate and school tours as well. Another program that we are involved in is the I Don't Flush. And what that is we have videos on our website, but we also have a one-page information on I Don't Flush that some municipalities insert that into their water bills to inform residents of what not to flush. And as we're all aware, with the baby wipes, they have that they're flushable, but they do cause a lot of issues at the pump stations and the wastewater treatment plants. Another water outreach education that we are involved in is called the One Water Program. And what that is we've partnered with different schools in the grade 8 curriculum that Aqua staff go into the schools and help educate students on water and wastewater. Aqua is your best choice. You get the best of both worlds, a lower operating cost, high value of service. You transfer risk from a municipality to a Crown agency. We also have 600 certified operators from operator in training to a level 4. And these operators hold like water treatment, water distribution, wastewater collection and wastewater treatment. We also have an essential services agreement, and what that means is in the event of a strike, there would be no disruption to your services. Aqua is a total solution provider, and we provide a full range of services and tools. And just in closing, I'd like to say Aqua is a lean operating public organization, and we would like to be your partner in the future. And I'll pass it off to Richard.
Thanks. So this slide here shows our regional hub org structure. At the top, you have the regional manager, and then we've got the business development manager, the senior operations manager, senior operations manager of capital projects, safety process and compliance manager, and then the regional hub business manager. Under the senior operations manager, the operations staff, operators, mechanics report to this person. And then the process and compliance staff report to the safety process and compliance manager. The Georgian Highlands region has over 80 facilities, and this doesn't include pump stations, reservoirs, or water towers. And we have about 72 O&M staff. As an operating authority, Aqua has comprehensive systems in place to ensure compliance and protect your infrastructure and the environment through process data collection and work order management systems. Communications between Aqua, the client, and council are a critical element in the successful partnership. We achieve effective communication through operations reports, client meetings, and council presentations. We're able to provide assistance with regulatory issues, funding programs, energy projects, and maintaining and managing minor maintenance capital projects. Aqua offers a full technical team to support your water and wastewater needs, including engineering and asset management. Aqua is able to share share services provincially and locally. This benefits municipalities by providing access to Aqua's buying power and diverse technical team. We're able to provide clients specialty expertise, such as SCADA technicians and energy management experts. Aqua, as an accredited operating authority, can assist with managing the risk involved with water and wastewater systems. Aqua has certified water and wastewater operators to fulfill the overall responsible operator and operator in charge requirements. Aqua has a quality and environmental management system in place to ensure the municipal drinking water subsystems we operate conform to the DWQMS requirements. As an accredited operating authority, Aqua manages all aspects of DWQMS programs for our clients. We also have corporate and local staff that work with the DWQMS auditors during on-site and desktop audits. Regional and hub management staff participate in municipal emergency response planning to help ensure water and wastewater infrastructure needs are met in emergency situations. Oh, could go back one. Sorry about that. Oops. Sorry, guys. Operation and maintenance is our core business. We employ certified water and wastewater operator staff and provide them with the latest technologies, work practices to protect your assets and to meet compliance objectives. Some facilities require full-time staffing, while others maybe only require a few hours a day. We're able to utilize operational staff, mechanical, administrative, compliance, and managers across those multiple facilities and clients within that hub to provide cost-effective water and wastewater facility operations. In addition to operation maintenance, Aqua can provide financial services, capital planning, so for example, 10, 20-year asset management plans, delivery of various maintenance and capital projects, including complete design builds, conveyance services group who provide distribution swabbing, repairs, hydrant fire flow testing. We also have an in-house training department to ensure all our staff receive up-to-date training on operational and compliance-related material. So thank you very much for your time. Jackie and I are here to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it. Questions from members of council? All right, I'm not seeing any. We appreciate it. We're currently under contract, as you know. I believe it's a 5-year at this point, and we would go through the proper procedure for requests for proposals or whatever tendering process would be determined at that time. I know you're aware of it. I know you're very aware of West Grey and our procedures, but I just want to say thank you for coming out. I think that was really important for you to provide the information and just saying you're out there, and that's great. So just because there's no questions doesn't mean we haven't read the information. So appreciate your time attending. Okay, thank you. Clerk Turner, I know it's only 5:02. I noticed that our third and final delegation for the evening is not here. I'll look again at 8 o'clock, but I'll at this point just proceed with the agenda, and then we'll take stock at 8 o'clock again. All right? All right. So item 11 is, item 11 is business arising from the previous meeting. I'm suggesting there isn't anything at this point. Item 12 takes us to staff reports. We'll deal with the Director of Finance and Treasurer's report first. The first item is approval of voucher number 10-2019. Questions from members of council to our Director of Finance and Treasurer. Councillor Herger, please.
Yeah, so I have a couple. On page 106, there's a request for pickleball supplies, $337.87. I was curious if there was a resolution from the New Stat Recreation Committee to spend that money?
We get the pickleball revenues, so that is the municipality buying it, not the fundraising group.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Frank Cowan, $8,385.89. I'm noting that's a Durham Arena deductible from August of last year.
Yeah, so it's a continuing claim from prior year. We have up to our $25,000 deductible level that we will continue to pay as the claim progresses.
Okay, on page 111, there is a staff jacket for $120. I know that we have a work boot allowance. I wasn't sure about a jacket or any other clothing that isn't necessarily required as a safety feature.
And that's so that we can have our recreation facility staff identifiable at the sites. So we have jackets that say, arena staff or rec staff, or so that then they can pick them out in the crowd.
So then we have jackets for everybody that all look the same and they are identifiable. Okay. Just looking at the University of Waterloo, $2,034. Curious what direction we might go with that expenditure. That's on page 117. Not sure if we were able to recoup that money or if we were going to be able to use that in a different area.
That expenditure is still being investigated.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? All right, I do have a motion then before me, and that is moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, seconded by Councillor Shea. Be it resolved that the Director of Finance Treasurer be authorized to pay accounts presented as voucher number 10-2019 in the amount of $360,975.75 of the Municipality of West Grey. Questions? Calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It does carry. There is one final item Director Mighton. Thank you, Clerk Turner. Information correspondence, council enumeration. Do you have anything to say at this point?
Yeah, there might be a couple adjustments to some prior meal allotments there, but I'll update that on the next quarterly update.
Yep, fair enough. Members of council. Councillor Herger.
Yes, I was just going to speak to the fact that my expenses seem to be rather large. I was going to say that two of the portfolios that I've been given were the Elmwood Fire Board, and that is actually outside of West Grey. It's in Elmwood, it is on the Brockton side. And my other portfolio would be the airport, and in which I have noted that we've had several extra meetings in order to look after the airport management and ensure safety. So just noting the distance there for kilometers and so on, and the number of meetings. They've been a little higher than normal, but we are looking forward to having some consistency and good and safe airport regulations.
Thanks for the clarification, Councillor Hergert. All right, anything further on the information correspondence? We'll need, okay, thank you, Councillor Shea.
So I thought just as a counterpoint, as I think the lowest expense councillor on the list, I wanted to point out that I am doing my job as diligently as I can.
Of course you are.
And I do show up at all the meetings. I live very close, so I can ride my bike to council meetings and don't have to expense those. And I didn't attend any conferences this year. And that was a decision because I thought that we should be having a discussion at some point, there's no urgency, to strategize about the most efficient use of our conference budget. And I think we've discussed that a couple of times. So I don't begrudge anybody who is going to conferences. I think it's great that we're out there collecting that information. I decided to sit that out this round and will be attending next year, I presume.
I would agree. I would say that. Thank you for the clarification. Not necessary because we all know you're working very hard. We all know that all members of council are working hard, so that's just fine. All right, that is an information item, so I'm not looking for a motion on the information correspondence. We're moving, well, let me just take a look at the time. Okay, we've got a few more minutes. I'm going to go to the Manager of Community Services first report, and this one is dealing with the 2019 recreation rates and fees. Manager Stewart, would you like to start the discussion?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to note that this year I sat down with the two facility managers, both Tom Culleton and Randy Murray. I had to think there for a moment. And we went through them, we assessed where the rates have been in previous years and how we could move them up or down, whether they needed to go. And we also did a market survey to ensure that we were staying competitive within our market and not going outside of that and being respectful and responsible with ratepayers' dollars. So you will notice there have been some items that have been moved or removed or added. So at this point, I would just like to take any questions that anyone has.
Manager Stewart, you're aware of all the amendments and that you're able to provide those to our clerk for the appropriate bylaw. Clerk Turner, do you have any comments at this point?
I don't have them at the time, but perhaps it would be in order to let council know if, so they're aware of the changes.
Yep.
Proceed. I can do that now. Thank you. There are a few minor changes on page 120 of the entire report. It states that the floor rental for Newstead is $53. It should really be $54 in alignment with the arena floor rental for Durham and Normanby. It's off by a loony. That was one change, as well as the sponsored skate per hour without heaters is also $54. And the only other change should be to the drop-in fees for roller skating. It said $3 for a drop-in, but it's actually $4.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Hutchinson.
I have a number of questions, but I would like to defer this to committee of the whole, because I think we need to have further discussion just because of the amount of changes, and I'd like to know why we're making changes, and I don't think we have the time tonight to do it. So if that would be okay. I don't think there's any hurry to get this done, right? Because these rates, I mean, we can put them into place anytime, I guess, but.
Just in terms of timeline, I'm going to take your motion as an indication of motion for sure, but I would just like a response from staff in terms of timelines, please.
The big thing will be, we have the summer camp and the swim program starting. So we have restructured a little bit of those. Mostly it's a cost of living increase on those ones. We did, the new piece is the before and after camp offering, which is new, something that we don't have in our existing rates and bylaw. So that's a new piece.
Last year, they had some specialty camps, but they only did trips like twice throughout the summer, and I'm suggesting we do them more often. And I've also added the specialty camp in for cooking as well. So those are strictly just to cover the cost of the supplies and the materials, because they are camps that have a higher cost to them in general.
So our committee of the whole meeting is May 28th. What would be the impact if we do wait? Because I do agree with Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, we are taking registrations now. If council, based on these new rates, if they get changed, then we would need to go back to the any registrants and either ask for more or refund money if it wasn't done.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, like as far as the summer camps go and that type of thing, I don't really have a lot of issues there. There was one regarding semi-private swim lessons, which I'm sort of question, but otherwise I'd be fine with, going ahead with the rates they have there. But there was a number of others with our rentals of our facilities that I would like to have a further discussion. My question with the semi-private swim lessons, they were 2018 we were 50, and then they went up to 70 this year. But when you compare that with privates, or actually with the regular rates, so under 2018, and I'm not sure if I understand, like swimmer 3, swimmer 4, is that age? Is that age you're talking there? Swimmer 5, swimmer 6, 6, there's a, okay, levels. So they're paying, like in some cases, $75 for a group lesson, but you can get a semi-private for 70. I realize you're getting a bit more time, 45 minutes once you get into higher levels, but to me there's not enough difference between semi-private and the group lessons. And I know in the past we've had some issues where people have opted out of the group lessons because the rates for privates wasn't that much more, so they went to privates. So, which is fine, but then, I think there needs to be more of a discrepancy. If you want private, you should have to pay a little bit more. So I have an issue with that one figure. That's the only one I picked up on there. So.
Okay, good, thank you. Councillor Townsend, please.
Yeah, can you tell me who the surrounding municipalities we used as benchmarks? Because I've been getting some feedback that in some of our plans we're like twice as much as others, and that kind of disturbs me, particularly if we're now going up, are we going to lose even more attendance? So it'd be interesting.
Through your worship, thank you, Councillor Townsend. I have a full document that I can share with council that has all of the different listings beside it, but I did use Grey Highlands, Chatsworth, Hanover. I went a little bit further and did kind of like the larger municipalities like Orangeville and Caledon, just to see where they were at, understanding it's a completely different market, but just wanting to know where we were on a scale. I've also looked at like Mount Forest and Dundalk and Southgate, so I kind of pulled everyone who was around us, and like I said, I do have a chart that I can share with all that detail.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hergert.
Yes, I actually have several questions on this as well, and so for that reason, I would second Councillor Hutchison's motion to move this to committee of the whole.
Thank you very much. All right, are there any further questions? Councillor Hutchinson, your motion?
Well, just to solve the issue, can we go ahead with the swimming rates? I mean, the private, semi-private, maybe that's something we have to feel out for the year and see where it goes, but let them go ahead with their registration on that part of it, because I don't think there's too many changes there, but it's just more in the facility rentals that I would like to have some discussion.
Okay, so we've got the recommendation to receive the recommendation from staff, that is, to receive the report, and then there's proposed bylaw 38-2019. How would the bylaw shape up if we did a full deferral of the bylaw? So I'm looking for the impact on that. Or as Councillor Hutchinson is suggesting, it's the facilities that you really want to address. So staff, is there a way to comment, split this? Does it make more sense to deal with it in its entirely, pardon me, at a different time?
Yeah, whether we want to do a motion just to indicate a sort of approval of the swim camp rates, since we are taking those registrations now, and then defer to the complete bylaw approval once we get a comprehensive update there. I don't, Mark might have.
I see where you're going with that. Comments from our clerk, please.
If you're changing any of the rates that were approved by bylaw, the bylaw would have to be amended. So you could amend the bylaw that's in the agenda now just to reflect those new rates. It'd be fairly radically different than what was proposed, but it would just be whatever set rates you wish to approve this evening, as long as those are identified to the satisfaction of council.
And what about the notification period? So we've got the proposed bylaw that is before us this evening with the amendments, rather than doing a full deferral. How does that impact our community? I wonder if our CAO could respond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I appreciate that there are questions, but from the staff table, if the aquatics and the camp fees could be approved this evening, that would keep that moving along quite nicely, because the season is upon us, and when we look at the variances, we're not proposing anything drastic on those two pieces of recreation. So for council's consideration, clerk, can we pull those two and just have divide the bylaw into two pieces?
Could we have a resolution that deals just with the swim programs, or do you need it in bylaw?
It would have to be amended by bylaw because it's a bylaw that established them.
Okay.
Again, as long as it's understandable what exactly would be approved by the amending bylaw 38. And then after the committee of the whole meeting is held, and if there's recommendations on the remaining rates, I would suggest that the bylaw that may be passed tonight as amended would be then incorporated so that the Schedule I is intact with all the new rates. So it'd just be consolidated.
Okay. Councillor Herger.
Well, I do actually have a question about the family discount rate as it relates to swimming. So previously it was the third child would be free, right? And now we're saying that a 15% discount applies to each program where 3 or more members of the same family are registered in the same program session and register at the same time. That would also be assuming then that all 3 of anybody's children would be in the same level of swim. It could be any of the levels of swim. Okay, so I still think that that is definitely an area that we should discuss. As everyone knows, West Grey has tons of swimming places and lots of water. I feel that this is a very significant change, as it really is a life-saving technique. So I think that we should really consider the family discount, whether it makes sense to have the third child free or if the 15% is sufficient. But we all know that West Grey has tons of water opportunities, and these are really life skills in the swim department. So I think it is worth discussing. Some people may have also already planned their budget around a third child being for free, for summer aquatics. So I think it is worth discussing further.
Further questions? All right, now I am going to go to Councillor Hutchinson for a motion, if you are so prepared. Clerk Turner? I'm not sure where we're at. Yep, fair enough. Clerk Turner, please.
If the thought is to amend the bylaw, it should be dealt with at the bylaw stage. There can be some direction here, but if there's a motion rather to defer the bylaw as a whole, or just to amend it and approve a specific part of it, that would be appropriate at the bylaw stage, as I say.
Okay, good. Members of council, clear?
Of course, the other option is defer, charge the applicable rate as it stands, and then apply it next year.
That is an option.
For the summer.
That is an option. So, any further questions at this stage? All right. Councillor Herger.
I would move that we defer this until our committee of the whole. It's 1 week, and I realize that that might present a problem, but I think it is worth discussing in its entirety. And I would I think allowing council that week to take it up and review it in full and have this discussion back and forth. I mean, some of these look like they're not a big deal, but I think there are other ones where we should be streamlining. One place we give 4-H a discount, or we charge them, but then another place we're giving brownies and other groups a zero fee. So I think it is worth discussing in full at committee of the whole.
Okay, so we have Councillor Hergert moving a deferral of consideration of proposed bylaw 38-2019 until our next committee of the whole meeting, which is May 28th, 2019. Is there a seconder?
Sorry, I'm not seconding it.
No, I would not accept your seconder anyway, but I do. Sure.
Yeah, as noted, I think it's most appropriate to introduce that motion at the bylaw part as opposed to right now.
Okay. Hold that motion. The clerk has instructed based on procedure for that. So if there's no other questions, let's move on to the next item that we have for Director's Manager Stewart. This one's dealing with Durham Pavilion, a snack bar agreement.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to defer this one at this time as other items have come up in regards to this agreement.
Okay. So members of council, are you in agreement? Yeah, again, I'm just reminded this one will also be at the bylaw stage, and we'll deal with this further at a different point. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment you on a job well done. It was much cleaner, and it was a lot easier to kind of handle and to navigate, so thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm just going to note down this bylaw. Okay, defer. All right, so that takes us off the community services reports. We're now dealing with Director Glazier's report. This one, full depth expansion asphalt recycling tender summary. Director, do you have any comments?
No, Your Worship, I can answer questions of council if they wish.
Members of council, you would have received a revised report for this council meeting, which included the dollar figures and also those companies that did submit a tender for consideration. Are there any comments? Councillor Hamilton.
Just a question for the director. Can you remind me how much you were projecting the cost would be and how this compares? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Hamilton, I was estimating it to be about $30,000 less, so it's about $30,000 over my original estimate that I brought forward to council. I'm sorry, I forget what date it was, but it'd be a month ago, I believe, back in April. I'm sorry that day eludes me, but
that's fine.
It's okay. So it's $30,000 more than you projected?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the cost per, just to give you an idea, the cost per square meter came in at $5.25. I estimated $5. And the actual calculation of the square meters, I carried the original pavement width, and I messed up mathematically. I was out 2,000 square meters on the job, so that increased it slightly also. So, but I do have uncommitted budget of $110,000 in roads that I was going to use to fix a section of concession 2 in Bannock, as well as I would be able to pull some of the funds from uncommitted again budget for road fixture or repairs, and not have to borrow any capital revenue or anything like that. So I'm staying within my budget, my actual roads budget.
Further questions? Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, you talk about using uncommitted OCIF funds as
yeah,
well?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what level that's at and how much you're taking out?
So we, I wish Carrie was still here, but regardless, I think I'm at we're at approximately for 2019, unspent OSIF is at $447,000.
Okay.
In change.
Right.
I don't know the exact
No, that's
amount.
okay.
The projection now for this project is, of course, going to be 30,000 more than what I projected. So it's going to be around the 480,000 range, I believe.
Okay, so it's all coming out
So-
of that fund?
Sorry?
It's all, the 358 is coming out all from the OSIF fund?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions? Okay, I do have a motion here for this first item from Director Glazier's report, moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby awards tender number WG 19-12, full depth expanded asphalt recycling to Roto Mill at a tendered price of $328,148.00 plus HST. Questions? Calling the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. All right, the second report from our Director of Infrastructure and Public Works is dealing with the Connecting Link funding. Director Glazier?
Thank you, Worship. This is just to ask Council for a resolution to support West Grey applying for Connecting Link funding to facilitate the maintenance repairs on the Fairfax Main Street Bridge. So I'm seeking Council's endorsement of that, please.
Very good. Councillor Hutchinson?
So this is, we're really just talking the bridge, we're not talking the full connecting link, big dig sort of thing. Okay, I noticed in here that you've engaged a services of BM Ross Associates to complete the application, so that's new. That's something we haven't done before, right? Yeah.
Actually, Your Worship, Councillor Hutchinson, prior to my arrival here, I believe West Grey had hired a consultant to do the OSIF funding application, Connecting Link funding application for Fairfax Street and the bridge prior to my arrival here, and then I took it over and did the last two applications for, or at least one, sorry, for the Main Street Bridge. Because of my workload, I decided I would engage a consultant. This is a very good consultant, specializes in bridges and has done very remarkable. His scoring on approval for bridge work is very good, so that's kind of why I pulled on him to help me out with this. So, and Your Worship, if I just one last, this one is very unique because the MTO reached out to West Grey with the application. Normally, we get an excerpt from AMO saying highlight Connecting Link funding that comes out, but this time around, and I think it has a big contribution or a big play on the Roma conference that West Grey had a delegation attend.
Yes.
And dealt with the minister, and CL Laura received an email from the regional director from the MTO giving us the link to the website link for the application for the Connecting Link funding. And secondly, I received an email from her subordinate, immediate subordinate, another regional manager, giving me the application. So I'm going, I'm thinking this is good news. Maybe they're, they're making sure West Grey doesn't miss the opportunity of applying. So I'm hoping, I don't like reading into things, but it just struck me odd that they would specifically give us the link to the application. Normally, they've never done that.
And
So-
thank you for saying that. We appreciate that, and certainly that any time that we have a delegation at one of our conferences in front of our senior levels of government, we would really hope and expect that there would be some impact that we would make, whether it's just learning about West Grey, but also directing funding our way. So this is definitely a possible example of that. So thank you very much for mentioning it. Questions over on this side? Councillor Hergert, then Councillor Townsend, please.
Actually, just have a comment. Sure. We did advocate at the Roma conference that we had done our homework, we had our bridge studies ready.
Yeah.
We knew what it was needed, and we were ready to apply. So I think, and I'm hopeful that that does produce something for West Grey.
Yeah, members of council, that was very much a very good delegation, and thank you for reinforcing that. Councillor Townsend.
I'll go even further. I think if we didn't apply after doing that, we would lose some face and some integrity on that by saying, we weren't serious when we went to Roma, and that might hurt our ability to go forward in a similar manner, and I don't think we want that sort of stain or that negative point on our file. So I obviously have moved the motion to do that for exactly that reason. If we've gone 3 times, we've talked to them, we've got our act together, as Councillor Herger said, we know exactly what we're doing, and then we didn't apply. I'll let you finish the sentence, but.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful segue. I do have the motion before me, but I do want to check if there's any further questions or comments. Okay, what a wonderful segue, Councillor Townsend. The motion moved by Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Shea. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby supports the application for the rehabilitation of the Garifraxa Street Bridge, and further that Council supports a financial partnership with the Ministry of Transportation, in brackets MTO, for the Connecting Link project. Any questions? Calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. That would actually be nice to put carried unanimously on that, so when we have the correspondence, right? Thank you very much. Director Glazier, I think that completes your reports, and thank you very much. Very exciting news happening in the infrastructure public works world. All right, I believe we might have our third delegation. Would your name be John Bennett? Oh, well, hello and good evening. Mr. Bennett, would you be prepared to speak now? All right, so I'll call you to the podium. Mr. Bennett is here regarding a dispute for a bill for allegedly placing debris on the road in front of his property at 802 Albert Street in Ayton. Welcome, you just have to press the mic button and...
On,
Yes, it does.
Okay. Thank you for council for letting me be here to be heard. And also I want to thank the council and everybody who works for the town for everything you do for the residents. I'm a guy that is usually very positive, and I want to bear up on that. And so you only see me when there's an issue, something negative, so I apologize for that. But anyways, it's important because I think you guys do take feedback seriously, and it's important for the system to work. So my first questions is in regards to this issue here. I did get a invoice from the town. And with the invoice is why I am being invoiced. Per se, it says debris on the road, and that it is a infraction, a legal infraction, and that I'm assuming a legal infraction would also be a safety issue. So I did receive this bill, and my questions in regards to the bill is, first of all, before the town ever invoices a resident, is it proper and is it policy to have the right attempts at communication with the resident? And number two, is there in fact given a time allowance if the resident is under an infraction to actually correct the situation?
So what I'd like, Mr. Bennett, is to for council to hear all of your delegation.
Okay.
And the questions will not be responded to at this table.
Okay.
But what I will also say is I'm glad you're here. And because you have an issue, so it's something that we would like to resolve. It's an open file right now that rests with staff at this time, so that's the status where it is now. So we appreciate hearing your concerns on it, and we'll be looking to staff to see if there is a way to mitigate the issue. Okay, but please proceed with your delegation.
Okay, very good. Then
Thank you.
I will give my full spiel.
Good.
Sorry if I'm a little nervous. I usually don't do these types of things.
Please don't be nervous.
My apologies for that. In respect to my questions, I feel like those things were not handled properly. First of all, the communication matter, I did get a phone call one day. It was actually, this invoice is dated April 26th, so I did get a phone call from Mr. Tim Cook on April 25. And Mr. Cook's phone call was not about illegalities, breaking the law. It was not about safety issues at all. He began to proceed first of all, I was a little taken back because Mr. Cook began to accuse me right off the get-go with his phone call of sweeping my entire property lawn, all my garbage onto the roadway. And I was a little bit taken back in regards to that. And I kept hearing him and I said, no, I didn't do that. And I began to explain that I swept to the edge of the road, the grit and part of the leaves that are on town property onto the edge of the road like I had done 6 years prior, and it was only this year here that it seemed to be an issue because apparently, according to Mr. Cook's words, later on when he came to my house, he said that the town sweeper had already gone through town, which I really did not know. And so another one of my questions is when it comes time for spring sweeping in the town of Ayton, are the residents made aware of when, first of all, the sweeping starts, and then second of all, when the sweeping ends? And is there a flyer that's given, posted, or is there something that's put in the paper? So I really don't know in regards to that, but I've never really had a problem in the last 6 years. So I began to proceed to tell Mr. Cook that I did in fact sweep that easement that belongs to the town to the edge of the road like I've done for the last 6 years. And I said, man, this guy is, his tone, first of all, and his attitude towards me, I felt intimidated, especially with the accusation that he brought towards me, and I felt harassed, and I began to get worked up. And I began to, so to speak, like if I am in a situation like that, I have no harassment policy. If somebody harasses me, well, you know what? They're going to get an earful, and I finished the conversation, I finished the relationship, and that's exactly what I did with Mr. Tim Cook. I hung up on him, and I'm sure I bruised his ego when I did that. But here's the thing, that very same day, I was out riding my motorcycle, and just an hour or an hour and a half later, I began to see Keith and Jim that worked for the town. Maybe I can't remember his name. Two nice guys anyways. I've always gotten along with the town, always cared for my property impeccably. And I see these guys pull up to my house and begin to clean the mess on the edge of the road. And I say, hey guys, you need a little bit of help? So I go get my gas blower and I begin to help the guys get rid of that grit and throw it in the dump truck and in the front backhoe loader. And we got it all cleaned up. And then maybe 1 hour after that, Mr. Tim Cook appears at my property. I see the man, I kind of figured it was him. So I go up to him, I extend my hand, I shake his hand. Are you Mr. Tim Cook? And I begin to talk to him. And he's taking pictures, and he doesn't seem very happy. And I'm trying to be nice and so on and so forth. And I ask him, well, what are you doing? And he answers me, he says, You hung up on me today, and you are costing the town money, so I am billing you. I am invoicing you for this cleanup. And I'm there, oh man. But you know, look at this is all your garbage crap, like loads of crap. I'm on a corner that is loaded up on the front of my lawn that I've cleaned up the last 6 years, and I guess the sweeper went by. And that was the issue, by the way. You know what? Mr. Glazier sends me a thing. The reason why I get invoiced is because it's against the law, and it could be a safety issue. And he never even told me anything about that when he came to my house. I said, why are you billing me? I says, you hung up on me, and you're costing the town
Could I just please,
money.
I would just ask Mr. Bennett
Hurry
to lower your voice. And we're very respectful here, and we're very much listening. So you heard me.
Okay. Yeah. So now I lost track here. Okay. So I just said, okay, well, you know what? You have to go through a proper process, Mr. Cook, before you could ever invoice a resident. And he said, oh, no. You know what? I recorded our phone call, and I was taken aback at that. Does the town secretly record phone calls with residents when they call them up? I don't know.
I'll answer that one right away. And that is a no, we do not. And I would suggest that the recording may have been in a book, like written down, just to record what was said. Okay, I wonder if you're able to wrap up.
Yeah,
Okay.
according to the context, it was clearly that he was pressuring me, and I'm going back to the harassment thing. He was putting the pressure on me as if he had something over me, and he said, I recorded our phone call, and then I just went inside. I didn't want to deal with him. Then he actually proceeds to write up the invoice that next day. And I'm saying to myself, is that the procedure for the town? Is that right away when something gets done, you do the invoice, or you wait till you have to do all the invoices? It seemed like he had a vendetta that he had to get the invoice in the mail the very next day on Friday, and then I received that invoice in the mail on Tuesday.
Okay.
I got it Tuesday. And so that's when I began to call the town. I called Laura Johnson first. I don't know if she's here or...
No, just continue on.
Yeah, and thank you, Mrs. Johnson. And I began to pursue this thing because, you know, I'm a nice guy. I've been helpful to the town the 12 years that I've been in Ayton. And then I run into something like that when I'm actually doing service to the town, cleaning up all the crap that they've thrown in front of my property. And so, you know, I was a little bit ticked about that. But anyways, so there's where I am. I don't think, you know, there was proper going through the procedure to send me this bill. And one of the big things is there's a time allowance. I'm thinking there's a time allowance. If he would have called me back, even if I wasn't at the house, and left a recording on my answering service and said, Mr. Bennett, you know, this is a safety issue, and we got to get this done very, very soon, and you're at fault here, so we're going to give you 1 or 2 days to get it cleaned up, I would have been all over that. I would have been all over that. Now, just this past week, one of my neighbors a block away had branches right on the side of the road, halfway on the road, halfway on his lawn. And I'm saying, oh, those branches are a whole lot worse than my grit and my leaves from over winter. And I doubt that he's ever been approached. You know, there's this thing about somebody confronting a town worker, and then the town worker getting a little bit puffed up and a little bit proud. And
Okay, Mr. Bennett, we
so
absolutely have heard your concern, and I really appreciate that you're here. We have noted it. I would like this to go to, well, still with staff, Staff have heard your delegation, and as we have as well. It's properly as an open file to be with staff at this point. We thank you for being here as a delegation, and thank you for your delegation.
And I thank you all.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
I appreciate the time.
Okay,
So
very
I'll
good.
just-
It's off. All right, so that completes all of our delegations at this point. Yes, it's an open file. You will hear back. Thank you very much. Good night now. All right, members of council, we're still on item 12 now, staff reports. We're now with the clerk report. There's a number of items here. First one is the Multi-Municipal Long-Term Care Working Group. Now, this is a group that both Councillor Townsend and I have been recently appointed to. We do not, we did not participate in the activities that are identified in this report, but we did go to the last meeting, and it was very important for the committee to communicate back to the member municipalities on what the activities were. Certainly a milestone is that, this committee was very much in support of, just supporting long-term care in Grey County, but specifically with keeping Grey Gables as a long-term care home within the Grey County inventory. And that's been successful at the county level, but certainly this group was instrumental as well, affecting change, which was really important. So Clerk Turner, I kind of did the summary on it, and I know Councillor Townsend, you're part of that. Just perhaps something brief at this point? Sure.
All I'm going to say is that it was really refreshing that the mandate was to keep Grey Gables, but yet when we were having the subsequent discussion, they were talking about their support for Rockwood and Durham as well. And that's, as you know, that was my passion while it was all occurring from 16 on. So to hear that, was not only reassuring, but it was really nice to hear firsthand. And also that the group is not necessarily finished, depending on what comes next, whether the terms of reference will expand or not, or the mandate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
For sure. Any questions on this information item? All right, thank you very much. So let's just receive for info. Now we're on Mark Loeffler, who's the owner of At the Movies, 138 Garfraxis Street North in Durham. So there's a request, Clerk Turner, would you mind taking it away?
Yes, so Mr. Loeffler is the owner of At the Movies, 138 Garfraxis Street North, Durham. Certainly an admirable thing that he's projecting to do, being a barbecue fundraiser for the local schools in Durham. And the only issue is, of course, it will be on municipal property, so obviously needs some support from this council. Couple concerns, certainly don't want to impact on traffic flow and the sidewalk. There seems to be enough area in the boulevard itself to be outside of that sidewalk. So obviously, as long as they're not asking to be on any parking space, they're on the boulevard part. So I don't think it'll impact on any flow, impede any traffic for accessibility purposes. So I haven't had this request before that I can recall, but really it's up to council to determine whether it's appropriate. Again, the intent is good. I do have a motion if council wishes to approve.
Councillor Hergert.
I would like to hear this motion. I know that Mark has been involved downtown in Durham before, and it is an admirable request, and I think that council should support this.
We're going to put the motion down to you because you've asked for
Perfect.
it.
Thank you.
Councillor Townsend, and then Councillor Shea.
Yeah, just to clarify Clerk Turner's comment, when you said we haven't received one like this on municipal property before, or we have? Because I just want to make sure we're consistent.
For a barbecue fundraiser, we do have a patio bylaw. We had one former restaurant maybe, that did want a patio, and they were allowed to have it on a parking space maybe 6 years ago.
Okay.
But nothing, not this particular type of request.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that to make sure we're being consistent across past performance, so thank you.
Councillor Shea.
Yeah, that might have been my question, Mark. You said there was a previous one where they had a parking space allocation?
So there was a bylaw passed 8 to 10 years ago that did allow the opportunity for a business, for instance, to apply for a permit to allow a patio like they would, like obviously metro areas like Toronto often will have an extension of the cafe. They'll be allowed to have a few little dining spots on the parking space temporarily. So they'd have to actually apply, provide a site plan, identify where and how long this activity would take place. And the
So-
council would consider that.
So we currently could, he's not asking for that, I'm just curious.
No.
If somebody else came and said, I'd like to do something and I'd like a parking space, and I'm going to set up my barbecue in the parking space, we do have a process for,
That, yeah, that would be something through that venue.
okay, that's what I was just curious if we could do that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile cause. Just my first thought when I read that was, does he have to have Grey Bruce safe food handling regulations in effect? So like, does he have to have somebody that has the course to do that, since you're selling to the public?
Super good question, and I'm going to defer to the clerk, but that I would hope is something that if the gentleman is not aware, that we could just convey that perhaps this is the next step. Clerk Turner, and then over to you.
That is a good point, Councillor Hutchison. Perhaps that would be appropriate to add to the resolution and subject to approval from the Grey Bruce Health Unit as applicable. Would maybe be in order, if the mover and seconder would support.
Mover and seconder, good with that?
Actually, I would say that that regulation comes in July 1st, and although we would ask, we would want to have a safe event, we could make a recommendation to that, but it isn't actually legislated to be a requirement until July 1st, so we could consider that.
Okay, so what are you proposing as mover? Just leave
So
your motion as is, or?
As is,
Yeah.
and just make a recommendation about the public health food safety handling course, and
sure.
then that way he could just be updated in advance, and that
Yeah.
way he could have a safe event as well.
Sure, and Councillor Hutchinson, I like that, because we're facilitating information, so just pointing the citizen in another direction for additional information, and I think that's really incumbent upon us to do that. Councillor Hamilton, please.
Yeah, I'd like to support this as well. I'm wondering about the BIA and if they're aware of this barbecue event, or have they been looped into the conversation?
Councillor Hutchinson, would you know that as a representative?
No, this is new to me, but Mark has been a member of the BIA executive. He isn't right now, so I don't think there would be an issue, because it's not necessarily a fundraiser for the BIA. It's done individually, right? So the BIA, as far as I know, don't know, but he may have formed them. I don't know, not sure.
Okay. Further? All right, well, I do have the motion then. Moved by Councillor Hergert, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby approves the request from Mark Loeffler, owner of At the Movies, 138 Garfraxis Street North, Durham, to hold a barbecue fundraiser in front of his store on the municipal sidewalk on Saturday, June 1st, 2019, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. And I'm certain that a member of council will put this as information on our communications at a later agenda. All right, now we are on item 3, which is the Durham Marching Band. Clerk Turner?
So the Durham Marching Band did obtain similar permission from last year at least, if not, may just be the last year only. Similar kind of practices once a week for a specified period. They have also indicated, obviously, they'd like to do it in certain private or parking lots in the conservation area, Saugeen Valley Conservation Area, and the Spruce Ridge Community School. So if council wants to entertain part of a resolution, they could include approving that, but I would also note, I've noted in the resolution that certainly they would want to get approval from those bodies as well.
Questions, comments? Councillor Hergert?
I would move this forward. They were very successful last year, and the music around town is just a nice added feature.
So with that, the motion's coming down your way. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Hutchinson?
Yeah, just one area that I did question when this came to council last year was the concern for being at 8:30. I know in the past when they've performed at the community center that I hear them at my house, and I live quite a ways away. So I don't believe we had any complaints from last year, but my concern was, could they cut it off maybe at 8 o'clock? I'm just thinking of young families. Once you get into July, August, it's not maybe as issue because it's summertime. You get a month of June, but obviously we didn't get complaints. I guess it's not an issue, but I just thought 8:30, if you're close to a young family trying to put kids to bed, I know that now as a grandpa, that can be an issue.
Mm-hmm. So the mover, are you going to entertain a 8 p.m. Close-off time, or are you going to let it stand at 8:30 p.m.?
I would say, just like Councillor Hutchison mentioned, that we did not have any complaints, so maybe we could just suggest that they turn to lullaby music at 8 o'clock. But really, the music is fantastic, so I think 8:30. They're pretty reasonable people.
Lullaby, I just got it. No, I'm joking. Okay, any further comments or concerns on this? All right, I do have the motion. Moved by Councillor Hergert, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby approves the request from the Durham Marching Band to hold outdoor practices in Durham on Mondays from May 27th to September 16th, 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. in various locations, including the Heritage Walkway Bridge, Durham Town Hall, in brackets, and the parking lot across the street. That's an end bracket. Outside Spruce Ridge Community School and at other privately owned parking lots, as well as holding an all-day practice at the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, bracket North Entrance Shelter, and a bracket on Sunday, May 26th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., subject to the additional approvals from the Blue Water District School Board, private owners, and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority as applicable. Comments? Questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. I must say, I think this is the longest motion that we've had to date. All right, so Councillor Shea, you do have a conflict declared on our next item, which is the Fabulous Festival of Fringe Film. Okay, certainly. Clerk Turner?
Yes, so I do have a motion
Thank you.
to certainly approve the request if council feels it's in order. I'm sure these events, as in the past, have been well attended and have fostered tourism in the area. So if anyone wishes to entertain the resolution.
Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Before we pass this, I just wanted to make a statement about this is, again, we have this come to us, this significant event, municipal significant event. We've had the discussion on this. I know there's going to be another one coming shortly for the Arts Fest group. I really wonder, is there some way that, like, what is the advantage of this? I don't think it has to do with a little bit cheaper alcohol when it comes right down to it. Is basically, is it something that we can change and get away from? I just find that, I don't know, like it seems to take up a lot of council time when it's, and then we have to decide, does this group get it and this group doesn't get it? I think it's something we need to look at in the future, but I have no issues with it for now, but I just think it's one of those things that we can make some changes on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hergert, please.
Yes, I was curious if maybe a proclamation would be more in order for this. We won't be having municipal staff at this event, right? There won't be any municipal staff. So we have discussed before the cost of the alcohol permit, and we've even heard feedback from individuals that have had these municipally significant events to say that there's really not any cost benefit to them. So I wonder if maybe a municipal proclamation might be more in line with what we would like to do here. We do definitely want to say it's important, and it does draw tourists to the area, and as a way of highlighting it within our community, I think a proclamation might be very appropriate.
Okay, Clerk Turner, do you have a comment? And then Councillor Hutchinson.
The only issue with the proclamation is the method to do that is to put it in miscellaneous correspondence, and it's to be pulled from there under new business. So they haven't actually requested that. And procedurally, it might be a little difficult to follow.
Would a resolution work instead of a proclamation? Councillor
Do you know what, I would like to take this back to the writer of the letter and ask if a proclamation would be something that would be in line, and if they would be okay with that, or the resolution, if that would suit. But I definitely think we should have some communique back and forth with the author of the letter.
Well, it would appear that we've got a little bit of time because it is July, so that is a possibility. Councillor Hutchinson?
I think it has to do with the liquor license application, that the wording is in there that it has to be a municipal significant event. Unless they change their wording, it may not apply. So that's the concern, I think, but we can check that out.
Madam CAO, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking at the AGCO website right now, and there is language to that effect that they would need this designation because they want to use their event as a fundraiser through the sale of alcohol. So that's the difference between us declaring it as a proclamation of an important event and making the designation of municipal significance. And we will recall that our manager of community services did bring a report to committee. Again, I don't remember how long ago, but if council is of the opinion that we want to take a closer look at that, we can absolutely revisit this. But at this point, I'm not sure that switching gears midstream is going to be fair to the groups. Something to consider.
I hear you on that. All right. Councillor Hutchinson.
One more comment?
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a moot point when our provincial government has now said that they're going to allow tailgate parties and alcohol in public spaces.
Yeah.
So maybe this is all going to go away with the new changes. I don't know.
Okay. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, I was concerned about shifting horses, as you say, mid-stride. Number one. Number two, I know it's a fundraiser, and I'm assuming it's the school. I'm not sure that's true or not, but it'll be interesting to see if that's where it goes.
Could you please pull the mic up? Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering if the fundraising, because it is a fundraising,
Mm-hmm.
and it's likely the school that they're supporting still. I don't know that for sure because it doesn't really say. But, it's obviously, I think we should give it some kind of recognition since it has been a successful fundraising event in the past too, so.
So where are we at, members of council? Do we have a motion of some point? Councillor Hamilton?
So I'm of the same opinion that this is something keeps coming up. We're going to talk about it, and I hope we talk about it soon so that we can set the course for next year. But given that this is a group that had a similar event last year and they have these expectations moving forward, I don't want to pull the rug from underneath them. So I would like to honor their request, but I would also like for us to book that meeting where we can talk about these details about how we're supporting our community events and our volunteers and move forward consistently. But this motion does have my support.
Very good. Madam CAO, I'm envisioning committee of the whole discussion for this. Perhaps not the next one, but the one after that. Is that something that could be arranged?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd appreciate that. So I will earmark the June committee of the whole to have some time set aside for this
Satisfactory?
conversation.
Okay. Thank you very much. And the motion's coming over. And it is moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby declares the fabulous Festival of Fringe Film events to be held at Glen Colton Farms on Friday, July 19th, 2019, and at the Durham Arena on Saturday, July 20th, 2019, with the Friday event beginning at 7 p.m. and concluding at 1 a.m., and the Saturday event beginning at 2 p.m. and concluding at 12 midnight. To be a municipal significant event, or to be municipal significant events, pluralized. Any questions? Calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Members of council, I'd like to take a very short break. I do also want to recognize that Councillor Shea had a conflict of interest, and when we return from our break, he will be part of the horseshoe again. 5-minute break. Thank you very much. All right, members of council, we have returned from our very brief break. We are now on Elmwood Fire Department. Clerk Turner, will you start the discussion, please?
Sure. We did receive an email from Carrie Mighton, actually acting as the secretary of the Elmwood Joint Fire Board. As you may recall, Council Committee of the Whole requested that the fire chief representing the fire board come before council to discuss the fire training house or structure. And then the response from Ms. Mighton from the Elmwood Board was that they're holding a June 26th meeting and they're inviting councils of West Grey and Brockton and the fire board members to attend for just an opportunity to ask questions and then get some answers on the fire structure. Again, by doing that, it would be in essence a council meeting or committee of the whole meeting if there's a quorum. Of course, additional costs, additional staffing resources. So I might suggest that we do have 2 Elmwood representatives in council on the fire board, and if they attended, which they would, as being part of that Elmwood Fire Board, they could certainly bring that information back if that's what, to alleviate that extra cost and council and staff resourcing issues.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would agree. I had it written down in my notes here that I would suggest also that our 2 council reps, which is Councillor Hergert and Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, attend for this event and report back rather than our full council. There's other events. There's other opportunities to attend, so that would definitely be important. It is tricky, I must say, that with the legislation requirement that if we all attend, it does necessitate a meeting of this council. So that there's other ways to address it, and one of the options is what the clerk suggested, and I certainly support, is having our 2 able council appointments attend. I did see a hand here, I'm just not sure who. Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Hergert. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there was a particular purpose other than just having us go there at their site, because it's easy for the people locally, like the other fire departments, to drop in because they're closer, so it is easier, and we can easily stroll by and that kind of thing, but we don't really get to do that in Elmwood. So I didn't know if they had a purpose of sight or whether they thought it would be better for us to see what they have up there, other purposes. So I was just going to kind of throw that out as a question
Sure.
Before we go further. So.
Sure, very good. Councillor Hergert.
Yes, so we were inviting both councils to come. It is a municipally, like a joint asset. The other part of it was that there were questions from an Elmwood Community Center vantage point, about where the park ends and where everything lies on the ground. So I can answer that question. We actually had a very good in-depth discussion at our last meeting, and it seems to be that the proposal would be a 20 by 30 foot concrete pad to the east of the Elmwood Fire Hall. Now, I would invite everyone to come out to the breakfast there, and you can get a visual for it. So I would describe it. We had a model there as well. One of the firefighters got really good and crafty and has made a model of the proposed fire training center. And if you've been to the Schwass Pit, then you would know that there is a 2-story structure. On the one side, it's completely open for the training purposes, and there are a series of window openings, door openings, movable walls, etc., and different angle roof pitches for firefighters to train. There's also this would look differently than the Schwass Pit in that now there is new regulation about the 4-foot and training at heights and so on. So there is a different mechanism to make that all work and keep it as a safe training environment. So we definitely were looking to get the councils together, the Elmwood Community Center Board to join in with the Elmwood Fire Board, and to have a wholesome discussion and any thoughts about people that have built these structures before, any input, any insight that we have. The approximate value of that is $30,000. It could go up to about $35,000, but that would not come at any further cost for our budget. The Elmwood Fire Department is trying to fundraise for the remaining $5,000 of it. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to take those questions, but I do invite everyone to come out to the firefighters breakfast anyway and get a look at the lay of the land if council decides to do something different.
Councillor Hamilton. Deputy.
Thank you for those details, Councillor Hergert. So as a member of the Elmwood Community Center Board, we've also been invited, so I would also be in attendance. So there'd be 3 3 council reps there all together, and certainly we had questions. The Elmwood Community Center Board is responsible for the park that's there at the fire hall and the field, so we had questions about location. There's a swing set there, there's a garden. Would there be actual fire safety for people using that area? And I'm confident that we'll work through some of those questions when we're visiting on site with the fire board. So I can hold my questions back for now.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, and then you can all report back here, possibly if that's the direction that this council decides. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I think some of this too is a show and tell. They want to show everybody what, and get more moral support, if you will. No fires, it's all simulated, so you know. Yes, the low roof on the back is under 4 feet. It's just going to be so that they can practice cutting holes into first entrance, and then they just reapply, so there's no safety thing there. But I think it's really streamlined for more of a show and tell, and it is directly behind the fire actual building, the station. So from what I had looked at, it's not going to infringe on the park at all. Thank you.
Clerk Turner, if it ended up that a majority or a quorum of our council went, what would the impact be? Not financially in terms of, mileage and that, but just in terms of procedure.
So knowing there were 2 council reps on the Elmwood Fire Board, they would be sitting as that board. Didn't realize with Council Hamilton, there's the Elmwood Rec that's going to be there as well. She in turn would be there as a member of that board, so it wouldn't necessarily count as a quorum of council. However, if then 4 more even came,
Yeah.
that would be the quorum. If the remainder of council came, and that would be a quorum. So that would perhaps be problematic.
Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
So if we go at specific time slots where not all there would work, because I'm sure a lot of people would like to show their support. So if I'm there hypothetically from 8 to 8:30, and then that's my shift or sort of thing, and it's just a food for thought. I don't know.
Yeah, if that quorum wasn't there outside of the council reps on the other boards, you'd be okay. Yep.
Food for thought. All right. Members of council? Councillor Hergert.
I would like all of our council to come and see what we have going on there. Like Councillor Hamilton, we have a parkette there, we have an entire fire hall there. This is our safety mechanism in that region. So we need to go out and see, and I don't think that we should slow up at the fact that we may have a quorum. I think that we should pursue knowing about our asset, knowing what we have, knowing the full coverage area of the Elmwood Fire Board, and being supportive of the project. So I would like us to all attend and take minutes if necessary.
Okay, members of council, are you looking at going at different times? Do you want to all go together? Just some thoughts? Councillor Shea.
We're planning on doing at least one and possibly a couple of tours of our facilities as a group. I assume we would have that same quorum issue and we would just deal with it. Could a visit to the Elmwood Fire Hall be attached to one of those tours?
I would say absolutely yes. Do you have a comment?
Well, certainly the tour will be a committee of the whole meeting. It'll be advertised. Any members of the public could tag along in a vehicle if they wish to. We'd have a set agenda, and perhaps, the time frames might be a little iffy, but if that works outside of the June 26th, if someone is there that day, whatever day that is, for the tour to show that structure to be available, I would hope maybe the fire chief at least would, for Elmwood or Brockton, would facilitate that. That would quite possibly work.
Thank you. Okay, just noting the sensitivity to quorum issues. If you're interested in attending, attend. and we'll just deal with the timeframes. How's that? Because I'm hearing from Councillor Hutchinson, I'm hearing from our deputy mayor, that you want us there. You want to showcase it. You want us to have the information so that we can articulate out to the community the support, and that's fine. And that's coming loud and clear in what you're saying. So I would suggest, just based on this discussion, if you'd like to attend, please do, and we'll just be mindful that we don't constitute a quorum. So it's not an issue to not attend, it's just an issue to be aware of, okay? But we're going to have to deal with that type of thing in other areas of our lives, so it's just appropriate and prudent to deal with it, and then it's how we deal with it. So does that seem fine? Final words, Councillor Hergert?
Sure. Just real quick, is that Elmwood Fire Board will have an agenda for that evening that will be on the website, that will be noticed to everyone. So it would just be a further extension of that agenda.
Good. Thank you very much. So are we clear on that? Oh, yes, Councillor Hutchinson,
What was the
please.
date again? The date?
July 26th.
June 26th.
June 26th.
6:30.
Do you want to say it again?
June 26th, 6:30.
Thank
At
you.
Elmwood Fire Hall.
Okay. Are we good with that? All right, so we'll move it on. That was a good discussion. Now we're dealing with Town of Hanover / Township of Essa, Township of Mulmer, Township of McKellar recuts to Ontario Library Services. Clerk Turner, please.
So certainly, library cuts by the province is getting some attention. There was some discussion at a senior management team meeting earlier today with the West Grey Chief Librarian noting some of the impacts. Certainly, it's a concern. On the other hand, we do know the province is in debt, and they are looking to address their financial situation, and it will cause pain, whatever direction they take, but I have recommended approval of passing a resolution. It will impact most particularly small and rural libraries, which are most vulnerable due to their size and their limited budgets. So I do have a resolution if council wishes to entertain it.
Any comments or concerns? I'm going to go look over here first because this is my dominant side for tonight anyway. Councillor Hutchinson, any questions?
No, I think I'd like to see us support it, because we've had this discussion and it's out there. We understand the need for cuts, but yeah, I think I'd like to support it this time. Just, we are part of, Ms. Hamilton and I are part of the library board, and we've had some discussions around this topic.
Good. Councillor Hamilton, please.
So further to Councillor Hutchinson, this was a topic that we spoke about at our last library board meeting just last week. So this 50% cut to the Southern Ontario Library Service was quite abrupt and sudden. It was unexpected. The Southern Ontario Library Service was created by the government as a way of making library service more equitable across Ontario, and for libraries to have a mechanism to work together. So part of what they do is interlibrary loan, where books are lent from one library to another, and also they provide training for staff and boards. So I went to a board boot camp. They would have been part of that. They provide access to large print books. They provide the opportunity for bulk buys, so books are costing less money, and they also are involved in buying bulk licenses for ebooks, which would be a lot more expensive if each library had to do it individually. In West Grey, last year, 1,986 items were borrowed through interlibrary loan. That's about 166 a month. And we also reciprocated about 2,100 items were lent out from our library. So for rural libraries, for isolated libraries, for smaller libraries, it gives us an opportunity to have access to all the books across Southern Ontario, and provides opportunity for kids who are researching for high school projects, for book clubs, for homeschoolers, well, for anyone who wants to read and have access to information, watch movies, all the kind of information that we could could send. So it is a significant cut in service that our citizens will feel immediately. Our CEO has crafted a letter that will be informing the public about the change of service, and the board made a motion for the board to write a letter as well, advocating for just speaking to how that cut's going to impact West Grey citizens.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, I'm going to ask, there was a discussion going on between Souls and the ministry, because the minister kind of freaked, I guess is the best way to put it, when he found out that it was the interchange between the library loan program that got canceled, and said that there was a solution to that, meaning use a different distribution system, right? So what I'm curious about is, where are those talks? Because if they're being successful, I don't know why we would want to disturb them, you know, with a negative feeling. If they're working on it, and I know that she had asked for patience, our own CEO had asked for patience, right, while that process worked out. So I'm curious as to the status of that. And if it is working and they haven't found they still have a problem, then I'd prefer we wait rather than just jumping on and piling on, if you will, and take a positive attitude, if you will, that they will be successful. If you know they failed, that's a different story. So can either you or Councillor Hutchinson give us an update?
Yep, so the information we received at the last library board meeting is Souls and the government are still in talks, and that they have asked for patience as they work through the talks. We also heard that the government's not suggesting that they'll be reinstating that funding. That message has been quite clear. And so as a board, we didn't want to point blame or be attacking at all in our letter. We're advocating for this cut has happened and this is the impact. And that's what the letter will be speaking to.
Councillor Townsend. Okay.
I guess where I get concerned is, like I said, they're working on it. Supposedly, the minister said he had the solution of the distribution costs. When someone cuts costs, they're not going to put them back. It's not going to happen, you know, 99.9% of the time. So it also isn't effective, and I'm just wondering if there isn't a better way, you know, to do it than just write a letter. And I'm not sure what that is at this point. I know the county's written on some other things, and my feeling there is to be more positive. So, for example, if you take Souls as the example, why not say for the Saugeen Conservation Authority, right? Why not turn around and say things like, do you have ideas as to where this is coming from? What is your research that got you to here? What makes you think this can be successful and not harm the lower tier? Because you can't keep dumping on the lower tier. That's how we got to the infrastructure problem we've got today when they did that 25 or 30 years ago, right? So it's not going to solve the problem. But if you work with them, it shows we're cooperating, and yet we may be able to point out to them when they share with us some errors in their philosophy, rather than just writing something that really doesn't work, right? If everybody writes, what are they going to do? Just file them? The trick is, can you really make a difference with our actions in other ways? So I wouldn't support that.
Councillor Herger, please.
So as the council member on the library board for the last 2 years prior to this council, I would suggest that we are possibly not doing enough at our local level to have an inter-library sharing within Grey County. And I think that this resolution somewhat says to the province that we must have this money and we are not sharing locally. So I am not supportive of this just because I don't feel that we're doing all we can locally. And I think locally we need to do a Grey County-wide library system. I feel like amalgamation is somewhat being forced down on us, and the only way to manage the change is with our local discussion about what kind of change and what does it look like in the future and how can we work together. I think it's somewhat ridiculous to say the province, we must have this, and yet we're not doing it locally. So if we're not doing everything we can locally to share those books and resources within Grey County where it's really close, I think it's absurd to think that we should demand from the province that we keep the funding. They're telling us by their money, by their dollar figures, where they're putting the money, what their priorities are. And we need to find a way to shape this change so that we don't lose out on those services. And I really think as a Grey County perspective, if we really can't work out library services amongst the 9 municipalities, we have a lot bigger problem. We're going to try and work on other, shared services. And this is definitely, I know that the library board members are active readers, participate in the community. These are the people that can help shape the change. And I definitely think that the change that we should first prioritize is that we're working within Grey County to share all of the resources that we already have.
Thank you. Councillor Shea, please.
So the last two councillors' comments, I think, were off the mark. I don't think this resolution or present proposal in front of us says anything about us establishing a Grey County library system. And I don't think we should distract ourselves from the issue that's before us. And Stephen, you also said that we shouldn't just write a letter that's going to go in a file and not be read. We should do what? You didn't have a counter proposal, so you didn't present one. So I'm going to defer to our 2 library members and take their advice and follow their lead on this.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Exception to that, what I said was that Souls is already working with the ministry for a solution, and I suggested we wait until they do that before we start writing letters. Letters don't tend to have the same impact as actions do. And the CEO of Souls has asked for patience. They've asked for the time. Let them work it through, right, rather than getting on everybody's case. That's their words, not mine. And by the same token, our CEO said exactly the same thing in an email. So if that's where they're going and that's what they want, and the ministry is willing to work with us, why would we disrupt that process? I don't get that. So my proposal was to actually sit, wait, let the work happen between the ministry and Souls people. And if they actually can show they've done the research, and by using the existing distribution systems, right, post office and et cetera, Amazon uses it, and they don't even charge shipping for a lot of their customers, right? And yet they're selling cheaper than they are in the stores. So there must be a way, there must be an opportunity to leverage those distribution channels in a different way. That's what the government said they believe is true. They were shocked when the interlibrary loan system was shut down. That's what prompted the minister's letter. So from that perspective, I'd say let them do their work, and then we worry about what we do if that falls through. And I think you'll get Souls coming to us and saying, we want your support, and then you do it en masse. You don't do the odd one here, the odd one there. That's where your leverage is,
Okay.
if it's required.
Thank you. Further down here, further over here, Councillor Hutchinson.
I agree that, the Souls needs to look at their budget and how they spent their money and whatnot, and that's coming forward, I think. But I don't think it hurts to put out to show public support. And by recognizing this, we're showing public support. We're going to do the same thing. We've got source water protection coming up next. So are we going to say, well, let the Conservation Authority figure it out? Or are we going to say, no, we'd like the government to recognize what they're doing and how important this is? And maybe there's a better way than just say, okay, now the municipalities look after it, the conservation look after it. So I don't think it hurts to put that support behind it, but I agree, there needs to be solutions. I agree with our clerk who said that, budget cuts are coming. We know they're coming. People voted to have budget cuts, so we're going to have to deal with them. But in the meantime, I still think it's important that the public has a voice, and this is one way of having it.
Good. Further? Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I think there's a place to advocate for how this is going to impact us. And then just speaking to a Grey County model, which I do think is a separate conversation, but just to appreciate that, for example, Toronto has well over 100 libraries and access to resources that Grey County would never have. Right? So by losing this service, we're losing books from Windsor and Guelph and Toronto and Ottawa, all over Ontario, and Grey County will never have that same capacity within our system, the capacity to store those items, to buy those items. So it is a tremendous loss, and I think West Grey should advocate for our citizens and how this cut is impacting our citizens, and let the government and Souls work out their solution.
Okay, thank you. Further before I read the motion? All right. The motion is moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby supports the resolutions of the councils of the Town of Hanover, Township of Mulmer, and the Township of McKellar, requesting the province to reinstate the 50% funding cuts to the Southern Ontario Library Service and Ontario Library Service, and further that a supporting letter be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is AMO, local MPP, and the Town of Hanover, Township of Mulmer, and the Township of McKellar. Questions? Calling the question. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those opposed? 2. It does carry. Clerk Turner. Thank you. The next item is Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, MMAH, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is AMO, Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, that's AMCTO, Bill 108, More Homes, More Choice, Act 2019. Clerk Turner.
So yes, Bill 108 is the omnibus bill, meaning a far-reaching bill affecting a lot of different ministries, different organizations, municipalities, obviously. This correspondence basically introduced what the bill is about and some preliminary comments from AMO, which is Association of Municipalities of Ontario, as well as the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, otherwise known as AMCTO. So perhaps this correspondence or these items of correspondence should be received for information. I know I've already seen more emails come through on the same topic. I believe just today AMCTO has a more detailed analysis, which I'll be bringing forward to council in one capacity or another. So, and obviously we'll have 3 more items in my report that are more specific to particular items, certainly all seemingly well, one planning related and a couple conservation related.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Yeah, Councillor Councillor Hutchins.
Not going to get into Bill 108, but I just thought one of the ones I thought was sort of interesting was Schedule 1, Cannabis Control Act, where it prohibits police from shutting down illegal dispensaries if the premise is being used as a residence. Does that make sense?
I'm going to defer to the clerk for that.
I read the bill, I think it was one of the nights last week or on the weekend. I don't know if that's phrased right. It seems like they're giving the authority to do so. When I read that schedule 2 or 3 times, I said, no, that's not what that's seemingly saying. I think that's a typo. That would be not good legislation if that was the case, which does happen.
Okay, very good. Councillor Townsend? Yes.
Yeah, I read the same thing, Councillor Hutchinson, and I thought it was kind of strange you take away a police power for someone who's breaking the law. But anyway, as a whole for Bill 108, I think that, one person said one author said there's 13 different acts, another one said it's 15, so we already have that disparity of what does it really change and affect. Although one was able to list the 15, and I could see comments, so it's good. The real concern I have with that is there's a lot of people advocating against it, so I think at this point we're probably best to sit on the sidelines and kind of let the comments continue and let the experts that seem to have the influence in Queen's Park do their stuff, and obviously the county will be involved and has been involved as well with their response. So I would support receiving it for information.
Good. Councillor Hergert?
Yes, I was curious what the deadline is to input comment.
I believe it's May 21st.
Okay. So that being said, I think this is the preferred mode of input for the Conservative Party, seemingly at this point. They've presented lots of options for individuals, municipalities to input. The last topic we had was a budget cut, and there was no consultation. I feel like we should not be missing out on these consultations and that we definitely should have these on an agenda, plenty of time in advance, have a report from a staff member and get our comments in. If this is the way that this provincial government is working, then I think the only way we can input our proactive preference is to make these deadlines. I would be looking forward to having any future comment period included on an agenda, more appropriate, maybe right away as soon as we get these. Now, no offense here, Mark, because they're really only giving us 1 month time anytime. So I'm not exactly sure how receiving they are on the other end, but I think this is the only time to comment before we get budget cuts and before we get ideas that we don't want. So I would look in the future to have these as soon as they come out. I mean, really, their comment period is very limited. But I think in order for us to get our proactive preferences heard, that we have to fall in line with their online registries.
Clerk Turner.
And that is the difficulty. A month time frame for such an important bill is woefully inadequate. That is the common theme that even AMCTO say it's entrenched with their memorandum of understanding that they're supposed to provide meaningful dialogue, and that has not happened. I was at an AMCTO zone meeting in Hanover last week, and there was AMCTO directors there, and they echoed the same sentiments. So it is very difficult, not only the short time frame, but for myself as a clerk, I'm not an expert on planning matters. I deal with planning, but I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on conservation-related matters. So it's hard to, or on drinking water source protection issues. So it's hard to formulate meaningful reports on those and recommendations. You see, even from the correspondence we're dealing with now, AMO sends out, and AMCTO sends out those initial documents, and they haven't really even formulated a response. And here it is, May 21st.
Yeah, I know.
So it's quite difficult for myself as a clerk to be able to provide that. And was I even aware of it? April 21st, a lot of these environmental bill of rights pieces, they just go on the bill, and you kind of have to know that it's on there somehow. You have to be checking that every day to know it's on there, unless some other organization is aware of it and lets municipalities know. So it is difficult, certainly I can say, from a clerk to provide that extensive, comprehensive background to what the act all entails of the bill. So it's difficult.
And I'd echo that. I mean, our clerk and our staff are bringing pending legislation to us as quickly as they possibly can, and that is on the most immediate agenda. It's a struggle for sure, based on the timing of receipt and having some assessment of what the legislation is saying, and then presenting it to council. So it's a balancing act, and I know that our staff are doing the best possible approach. And here's an example of everything that's on the clerk's report that's dealing with pending legislation and comments. So I completely understand the approach that you're taking, and it's very timely, and it's before council as soon as we can deal with it. It is a struggle because of the time that we're in receipt of it, making the assessment, and also having it before council, and then trying to achieve the time frame, which is a very strict and tailored to reports. I do hear you, Councillor Hergert. We'll just do everything possible that we can in terms of addressing how legislation is taking shape. I do want to defer to our CAO. The Ontario Municipal Administrators Association in the past has had opportunities to meet with senior level officials, senior levels of government. Is there anything on the docket that a meeting is coming forward, and can this be conveyed? A strong voice, perhaps? Looking, because it wasn't part of the different associations listed here. So do you have a comment to that effect?
Thank you for that question. That's a very good question. I haven't seen anything come across my desk, and in fact, we just had a conference a week ago, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and this wasn't even on that agenda. So, I think there's a bit of scrambling at a whole bunch of different organizations, but I will reach out to them tomorrow and see what their thoughts are at least.
Thank you very much for that. All right. Scanning over to my right, going back over to my left, Councillor Townsend, Councillor Herger.
Taking the thought that Councillor Herger had and changing it slightly, we're going to have a strategic plan session on May 31st. And with all this going on, and perhaps not having summarized it in any way, particularly as we start getting people talking about financial impacts, right? We know what Souls is, we know what, and therefore we know what we're likely to lose. Later on, we're going to talk about the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and anything else that we know about, at least to be aware of it. Should we not have some kind of summary of all that's happening to have that discussion when we do strategic planning? Because that could affect the direction that we decide to take this in or have to take it in. We also have a fund of $642,000, less the 110 that hopefully we'll get back at some point, that's supposedly been targeted for improvement. So how are we going to keep that into our strategic planning? So if we take all that together, is that something we can sort of take a glance at? It won't be in depth unless the government all of a sudden makes all its decisions by then, not that I expect that, but at least it will help us set a direction going forward in our strategic planning.
So what I'd like to say is I think we need to keep the strategic plan really straightforward. We're on the final phase of it. So we're dealing with our identity and the mission, vision, sort of values. I know that potentially will change in labels, but I'd like to hammer down that strategic plan. We're just one meeting away from it, and I think we can look at what you're suggesting at a different time in Committee of the Whole, and also the social enterprise. I think I want to pick up on that again. That was very well done. But these are different approaches to achieving our goals. So, so having the strategic plan is one thing, and having that organized, and then the means by which we're dealing with it can be further discussions, quite frankly, for many other Committee of the Wholes. But let's look at strategy separate because we do need to hammer that down and get that organized and approved. And then the ways that we are achieving our goals and objectives, which we've got already lined out in our pillars, would be the different approaches we take. So that I see, I just view that as a different approach through a Committee of the Whole meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to keep tabs on the fact that it is there, and
sure.
we may have to deviate slightly from our goals of what we want to do, just through necessity. And so I'm just thinking at some point we're going to have that summary. We're going to have to know where it is, and if there's going to be adjustments made. If we know something for May 31st, we should deal with it. If we don't, then we'll deal with it afterwards. But I'd be really concerned of going out and going through all that, setting up our goals, and then finding out that we can't even attain them because we're too distracted.
I think
what we really have to do.
I think we're pretty okay on our goals and our pillars, and I'd really I'd like to get them approved by council. But I think the different approaches and the different ways to achieve those goals, I think is up for discussion.
Okay, so let's see how we get on March 31st, or sorry, May 31st, and go from there. But it is something I'm definitely keeping an eye on.
Absolutely, agreed to. All right, Councillor Herger.
So my last two comments would be, I didn't see any changes as it relates to the Landlord-Tenant Act.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of landlords that I've spoken to that feel maybe an Airbnb model is more of a preference versus a rental property. So tiny homes, I was happy to see that hit the mark. I guess I'll go ahead and submit my own comments on this. But, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing we've done in the past, and I think it's a micro solution to how things are being presented to us in the time frame from the ministry. That's one thing, if we are speaking with the ministry, that we definitely articulate that the rapid response is too rapid for us to collectively put something meaningful together. So in the short run of it, I think it's really important to get our comments out there on an individual basis. Further comments? Very good discussion, absolutely. Great discussion for an item for information. Okay, thank you for that. So we're moving along to the Saugeen Grey Sauble North Bruce Peninsula Source Protection Region Management Committee / Drinking Water Source Protection. Clerk Turner.
So yes, another example of potential results if Bill 108 receives a royal assent, estimating that they could have cuts of up to $210,000 a year, which would increase municipal levies by 7% as it relates to drinking water source protection. So there'd be tax or budget, tax increase implications, or possibly cutting some programs as well, although obviously some of those are mandated by the province. So certainly concern expressed by Drinking Water Source Protection. So looking for any council direction. I do believe I've requested Mr. Sider, who's the project manager, to attend a future meeting to provide some updates to council. I know he's meeting with some of the senior staff, while myself and Rent Glazier, to talk about some similar issues, updates, and some possible bylaws that we could enact to assist in protecting drinking water in this municipality. So we look forward to that as well, but so looking for any council direction.
Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, obviously, our source water and our watersheds and et cetera need protection. There's no two ways about that. Having the Clean Water Act alone, says the dedication that we're supposed to be having. So rather than just say, we're not getting the funding, and we object to the cut, I'd rather turn it around again in a more positive sense and talk about the impact that it will have, the risk that it brings in from that perspective, and sort of try to justify why we're concerned about it. But also, I'd like to ask them to provide input back to us as to how they expected this to attain, because you can't just download. And I think at some point, we're going to have to use that word with the government and just say, if you're going to download, we have no choice but to cut services. That will have a risk issue. So which services are we allowed to cut? And again, I'm talking generally, not specifically, because I don't see just saying that we oppose to the cut and can you put it back is really going to be effective. I think we have to build the business case to get it back, or get the acceptance that there is going to be a lower service level at this level, because you can't keep piling on. So,
Thank you. Further? Do you have a comment, Clerk Turner?
Certainly, I'd agree with Councillor Townsend if,
Sure.
Even if a resolution is passed opposing the cuts, it would be prudent to voice why there's opposition to the cuts, expressing those similar thoughts.
Okay. All right. Do I have any other comments? Councillor Shea.
So, Mark, you're looking for a resolution, carefully worded resolution that...
I do have a resolution if council is looking for one.
All right.
I would...
Thank you.
Language about rationale or risk?
I've noted that in the minutes, so I will voice those concerns. And if any council members want to just email me some thoughts, I can certainly add that when I get the letter. If the resolution is passed, it'll probably go out the next day or two.
Any other comments or concerns? All right, I do have a motion which reads, well, first of all, moved by Councillor Shea, seconded by Deputy Mayor Tom Hutchinson. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby opposes the proposed funding cuts to the Drinking Water Source Protection Authorities that will result if Bill 108, More Homes, More Choice Act 2019 is given royal assent. And further, that a supporting letter be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, which is MECP, local MPP, and Saugeen Grey Sauble North Bruce Peninsula Source Protection Regional Management Committee / Drinking Water Source Protection. Further comments or questions? Calling the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? It does carry. So, okay, thank you. All right. All right, so we are on County of Grey, Office of the Warden. Clerk Turner?
So the County of Grey has completed another report. This is regarding, again, proposed budgetary cuts and downloading to the conservation authorities in Ontario. They have, in the report, they talk about Conservation of Ontario. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong spot there. They do respond on Bill 108, again relating to the Conservation Authority, the impacts on the authorities, and they did pass a resolution, at least at the committee of the whole stage, recommending that the province acknowledge Conservation Authority's strong and positive provincial role in flood risk reduction programs, and also seeking the reinstatement of funding to conservation authorities. So I look for direction from council.
Comments, questions? Councillor Townsend?
Yeah, in some ways, I like the county's approach that, they were actually giving feedback similar to what I was talking about for the water protection and the Clean Water Act. And so from that perspective, I'd supporting that action. I'm not sure whether or not we would then write similar saying we support that or we do our own. That's the only question I would have.
Okay, thank you. Further? Councillor Hamilton?
Further to that, the county is asking us or requesting that we support with a resolution, so I would support that.
So it's coming down your way then. Thank you for that. All right. Councillor Hutchinson?
I think it's interesting that, back to what Councillor Townsend said, that, they're making all these cuts, but really it's coming down to saying, we're making the cuts and we're giving you very little time to respond, so you figure it out. You come up with solutions, and they're going to get a lot of paper coming back their way, but I don't think they're going to make many changes. I think the one venue that we have, I think there's going to be a lot of discussions and a lot of angst in is it AMO in Ottawa?
Yes.
AMO's in Ottawa this summer.
Yep.
So I think, things are going to come to light there. They're not going to be very happy, but so it'll be interesting to see how many ministers show up and how much flack they want to take.
Sure. And in light of that, Councillor, I think it's really good if we all start thinking what delegations we would like. And then we could start working on those, keep a list, and then when that comes forward through our clerk in terms of the possible topics, we're ready to roll and get that out. That's actually a very good point, Councillor Townsend. If there are no further comments or questions, I do have a motion, so I'm scanning both sides. All right. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Whereas the County of Grey sent a letter with comments/resolution from the Grey County Committee of the Whole to the Environmental Bill of Rights, EBR, Registry, respecting the modernizing Conservation Authority operations, Conservation Authorities Act, and focusing Conservation Authority development permits on the protection of the people and property, as detailed in Schedule 2 of Proposed Bill 108, More Homes, More Choice Act 2019, recommending the province acknowledge Conservation Authority's strong and positive provincial role in flood risk reduction programs and reinstate funding to conservation authorities. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby supports the County of Grey resolution and requests a supporting letter be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is AMO, Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, MECP, Conservation of Ontario, local MPP, and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. Comments? Questions? Calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It does carry. Thank you. Okay, that's that. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority item. Clerk Turner.
So again, the Conservation Authority alludes to some, obviously, budget implications for next year, and I assume subsequent years if the Bill 108 provides or is received royal assent. The second part of the report does indicate that they've worked with the Conservation Ontario, and they're in support of the 3 identified priorities of the province to increase the housing supply, and they note 3 different reasons, and so they at least have concurred with the priorities identified by the province and indicate that they will work towards achieving those goals. So I thought that was quite proactive of them to do that. So
thank you.
I thought it was a pretty balanced report. I believe there's no real action needed in this correspondence, so maybe just receive for information.
Yeah, thank you. I serve on the board of directors for the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and so does our deputy mayor, Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. It was important that this information be provided to the member municipalities, and just for your information at this point, certainly there will be some type of impact on our 2020 budget, but to not provide information ahead of time did not seem prudent. So that's why we're being proactive in that regard. But at this point, it's just information. So good information to have. So, with that, any questions and just receive as information? Thank you. We are finally on the final item of a very thorough report, Clerk Turner, and this last item is Town of Aurora.
Yes, so the town of Aurora has passed a resolution, the council opposing Bill 108 as it relates to sort of a planning implications. As council is probably aware, at one point, for a long time, the Intermunicipal Board was the appeal body that heard any appeals of zoning bylaws, severances, minor variances, for instance. And that was changed fairly recently to the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal, also known as LPAT. So the town of Aurora Council is and now it's supposed to revert back to sort of an intermunicipal board kind of process. So town of Aurora Council is not supportive of that reversion. As you may recall, we had this discussions with our municipal planner, and our municipal planner's opinion, and he cites other planners that are not really happy with the LPAT change. They're changing to LPAT, and the process, he has indicated that, in his opinion, the process for LPAT is fairly muddled. It's not very easily distinguishable what the actual process is. So he has actually welcomed the thought of going back to the intermunicipal board, or at least the style that was in the past. If this motion was supported, I can support the premise that there may be potential negative consequences on the community building and proper planning aspects of the bill. And I certainly do support the resolution that speaks to halting the legislation until there's fulsome consultation, meaningful consultation, which has not happened in many municipalities and other bodies' opinions. So in that aspect, I think that can be supported. The question of the reversion from LPAT to the OMB might still be something that could be negotiated, but that would be that process through the further consultation. So I'm looking for any direction from council.
Okay, questions, comments? Councillor Shea.
So as I recall, the main complaint about the former OMB process was that an external body, external to the municipality, was the final arbiter of any review or appeal, and that developers were taking advantage of that, and in fact not even bothered really to apply properly at the municipal level, because they didn't really care if they got it approved or not, because they knew they were going to appeal it and get it approved at the OMB. So basically the OMB was stripping the municipality of its planning authority, not its planning ability, but its planning authority. And that would be a system that I would not want us to see us return to.
Right.
If this current system is flawed, I'm all for improving it, but moving back to a system which takes local decision-making out of the hands of local decision-makers does seem hugely problematic. So I would support the resolution as you've drafted it.
So it's coming down your way? No, that's just fine. Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me. I've been at OMB 3 times. And interestingly enough, 2 of them were challenging a municipality that actually was not planning well. They were not doing their job. They weren't being held accountable. In one case, we lost because we couldn't get an expert to testify for a residents group. In the second case, we actually were such a pain in the, where of the OMB people that they actually told us, fine, you got a week to find some expert evidence on your own. And we did. We could actually prove that the municipality was in fact planning badly and got to the point where the decision was going to be made. And before it was, the 2 parties walked away because they didn't want to be embarrassed by it. So the OMB can serve a purpose for those that are not playing by the rules. And that's really where I think the protection for the resident and or developer actually come out. It's when you get, I'm going to say, a poor OMB person that gets sympathetic to a resident or developer person, and doesn't actually take into account the process that they're supposed to follow. And they don't take in all the evidence from the municipality. So either way, you're going to get a win-loss. I would rather have that process available to residents where they can actually put their case forward, and with the right evidence, I don't mean just let any willy-nilly decision be made, then they do get that fair shake, where it sounded like LPAT they really weren't, and that was part of the concern. And I have not actually seen a situation where the OMB actually made a decision that was wrong based on evidence, right? They just didn't have the evidence to turn it. The third one, by the way, was in support of West Grey and their planning department. So, and that was successful. So I think when you look at the fact that the process can and does work in most cases, I don't see any problem with the way that they're proposing. It annoys me that we have to go to an unelected official, but I'm going to assume if we are doing our job, we have nothing to worry about. If we're not, then maybe we should have something to worry about and correct our process.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions on this side? Moving over here. Nothing? All right. I do have a motion before us. Moved by Councillor Shea, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby supports a resolution of the Town of Aurora Council opposing Bill 108, More Homes, More Choice Act 2019, citing potential negative consequences on community building and proper planning, and asking the province to halt the legislative advancement of Bill 108 to enable fulsome consultation with municipalities. And further, that a supporting letter be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, local MPP, and the Town of Aurora. Comments, questions? Calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. All right, that does complete all of our, so I'm passing this down. That does complete all of the staff reports. And now we are dealing with the proposed bylaws that fall under item 13. So the first one is moved by Councillor Hutchinson, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved that bylaw number 37-2019, being a bylaw to rezone lands described as concession 1 EGR, Part Division, is that Part Division? Thank you. 2 and 3, Part Lot 30, Concession 2 EGR, Part Lots 69 and 70, Geographic Township of Glenelg, Doug Marshall and Don Marshall, be now read a first, second, and third time passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Clerk Turner, any comments on this one?
That was recommended for approval by the Committee of the Whole Planning during the May 14th meeting.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? Calling the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. All right, so we've got a couple bylaws. What do we have here? This is 40. That's the procedural.
This is the
Second last one. And something else is coming. All right, let's see what we have. This is dealing with proposed bylaw 38-2019. Yes. Moved by Councillor Hergert, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby defers bylaw number 38-2019 for discussion for discussion purposes during the March 28, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting. Thank you. What did I say?
Did I put March?
Yes, that's okay. So you now know I read, or I say what is written. Okay, so are you okay with just, rather than reading, it's May 28, 2019 Committee of the Whole? And thank you, all members of council, for actively listening. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. All right, so now we're dealing with proposed bylaw 39, 2019. Is that this one? Yeah. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Hutchinson. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby defers bylaw number 39-2019 for discussion purposes during the May 28, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting. Questions, comments, members of council? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. You definitely don't want to go back to March. All right. Now we're dealing with confirming bylaw. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchinson, seconded by Councillor Shea. Be it resolved that bylaw number 40-2019, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the May 21st, 2019 council meeting, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions? Calling the question. All those in favor? Carried. Opposed, if any? Carried. All right, so that is our bylaws. Item 14, new business. Now, Councillor Herger, you had some questions with regard to SMART minutes and library board minutes. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I noted in the library minutes that there was discussion about an agreement with Mount Forest Library. Was there going to be any further discussion on that?
Councillor Hamilton?
Or Hutchinson?
Or Hutchinson, actually, yes. Thank you.
Well, it came up, but I believe it didn't go anywhere, right? There was no discussion. I can't remember what there's no agreement, but yeah, I don't know.
So further to that, so we did reply to the resident. It was a letter that came from a resident. So we sent a reply acknowledging that we received the interest. And the library is beginning strategic planning, so something like that might come through that process as well as we're examining.
So I just wanted to reiterate my support for a broader library service beyond just West Grey, and to the point that we do have an agreement with Markdale in place. We don't have one with Hanover. We used to have one with Mount Forest. I think that there is plenty of room for us to cooperate and participate, partner more to get the access that people need. We know we have residents that live at the south end of Normanby that frequent Mount Forest. We know we have people that live over at Glen Elg that would frequent Markdale. So I think to make those connections, I'm sure both of you are the people to do those and make those connections for a better library service. I guess there was I did have another question about the library minutes. There was note of an email vote. And I was curious, I know the library board works under different regulations than we do, and I was curious if that was procedurally allowed.
So under our library board procedure, it is, and it was ratified at a meeting. If you're asking more of a municipal...
No, I know it's under a different act,
okay,
right? Library
yeah.
services.
So we did follow our library board procedure.
Yeah, very good. And as my last question relates to SMART, I was curious about the procurement bylaw that would be followed as it relates to the purchase from MicroAge in Hanover for $16,000. I know that Hanover is the host municipality for the money. I didn't know if we followed their procurement bylaw or whose, because there are so many municipalities involved in SMART.
I appreciate that question, and I asked the same question at that board meeting, and there was no bylaw presented at that meeting.
Okay.
So I hear your concern and share your concern. Could I bring that concern to the board and bring that back to West Grey?
Absolutely.
Thank you for asking.
I do have one last
Go
item
ahead.
I'd like updated. I know that we're getting to the fee schedule, and that'll be at our committee of the whole. It might be appropriate to ask this at a different time, but I'll ask it now. The fees that we would pass in that Schedule I, the fees as it relates, when would we see this booking software that we have updated with those new fee schedules? When would be the public launch of booking?
I know you've asked that before. Madam CAO, do you have a response at this
Yes,
point?
thank you, Madam Mayor. We are aiming to have that live for the fall ice season bookings. So we still need summer to get the back end completed.
Okay.
Thank
You
you.
very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, anything further? Councillor Townsend.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on the SMART report since Councillor Hergert withdrew it. One of the things that frustrates me with the report is it's small in print. Okay? Now,
Okay.
it's just the nature of how much data is there. So one of the things that frustrates me is you can't see the minus sign. However, if you look to the left on the report, it says a surplus is just the word surplus and a deficit has brackets on it. Would it be difficult for them to just change it to brackets like it indicates in the description rather than a minus sign? Because everything is so crammed together, unless you're really, really careful, you don't see them.
Okay.
Right, so anyone else reading may find the same thing, I don't know, but
Good.
maybe it's because I'm getting older.
Thank you. Fine tuning is always a good idea. Anything further under new business? Thank you very much. Item 15, no addendums. Item 16, notice of motion, direct motion. We have nothing before us. Is there anything before us? Okay, thank you. Item 17, closed session, incomplete items only. Item 18, matters arising from closed session, incomplete. No to both of those. Item 19, question period. Is there anyone in the audience with a question? All right, thank you very much. No questions. Item 20, Municipal Act notices. Clerk Turner, nothing. And we are on the final, item 21, adjournment. Who am I going to look at? I'm going to do Deputy Mayor and I'm going to do Councillor Hergert. All those in favor for adjournment? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you very much. Well done again.